Tonight is the Finance Committee meeting of 5 March 2014. And what I'd like to do is to tell you what we have on the agenda for this evening. First, we'll go over the minutes. Second, we have Chief Purview with us to get a police detail update. We'll look at any reserve fund changes that we have to make. We'll discuss the library meeting, the meeting that was held last week. We'll get an update on the Municipal Building Committee meeting. We will get an update on the stipend research. We will talk about the roundtable that will be coming up next week, March 13th. We'll talk about projects that we could use in town that would gain efficiency for the town, different ways that we can buy and purchase and things that might save us money. We will be able to talk about a joint financial planning meeting, which will be the 25th of March. And that's where we get together with the Dudley Charlton team, those people in the financial team from Dudley, the school committee, the superintendent, and we will talk about the upcoming budget year. The community improvement projects, to see if we have any of those that would benefit us. And meetings on cable, which tonight we are for the first time. Last year we were on cable, and we were on cable because we did this for the department head meetings. Now we'll be on cable each meeting. And then finally, we will get to the budget, and we will discuss the budget. Now, let's begin. Anybody have a question, a comment on the minutes that were sent out by Kristen? And thank you for that. Very efficiently done once again. Well, hearing none, is there a
motion to accept the minutes?
Okay. I have a motion and a second to accept the minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. It's unanimous. Chief Purview, please come on up and begin filling us in. Chief Purview is going to be here tonight to update us on the police detail account and how they're collecting, what's still out there, and you'll be hearing the rest of it. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Joan, did you want to? And could you give one to Drew to know where we're going? Thank you. Now, Chief, the floor is yours. I know that last night you did brief the selectmen. I watched that, and so the floor is yours.
Okay. Through the chair to the committee members. Since the last time I was here, you can see that as of July 1st, 2013, at the top, we were showing a deficit of 234,730.20. When we did the audit, and currently the deficit balance, since then, we've been aggressive in taking, a lot of different monies in, researching and changing how we do our billing and our accounts receivable, and that information has been coming to the town administrator, yourself, Mr. Morrow, and the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, and Ms. Walker. So to show you what our progress has been, I'm not sure if those collections, if you've shared those out to you.
No, I haven't sent those out.
I don't have, just for the figures on the top, we've been working with town accountant Joan Walker, and these are the figures to date that we're showing as outstanding. There's a lot of that's still in play that we're working with the major vendors to still recoup. I don't have a printout when you look at the prior years. The printout that you have, the itemized printout tonight is for FY 13 and 12 that you have in your packet. The other items that are outlined as prior years, I don't have that here tonight. But I do want to also address where it says total amount includes $21,189 owed by Charlton Water Sewer Department. I mean, it's not sewer, but it's the water department. We've been working with Joan and going back and forth So that number is significantly less than that number. We haven't fully collaborated back and forth, but a lot of that is duplicate billing. So that number will, we're checking, like there's one invoice that's for $8,000. We're trying to confirm whether that's a duplicate or not. But there's like 13,000 of that we've confirmed was duplicate billing. So out of that. So, but those figures have not been adjusted for the respective fiscal years that are listed above, because we're trying to work on that separately to identify that.
So you're saying the deficit balance up above of 3/3 through 2014 includes
No.
that 21?
Well, I'm just saying that the 128, 324, I'm just saying we're trying, we're working to, you could take it, tonight you could take at least 13,000 out of that figure. Yeah, that's duplicate. And the town accountant's here, and, I just spoke to her prior to the start of the meeting. So, but we have a fair amount of money that's still, coming from Charter, from National Grid, and from Verizon as far as the bigger vendors, and we're working on the smaller ones.
Anybody have, yes, sir.
The duplicate billing issue, have you identified how that occurred and what you're gonna do to prevent that from happening?
Okay, the duplicate billing was during, it wasn't for any of the other vendors. What happened during the water project, which was a long, involved project, there was duplicate billing because there was where there was a discrepancy in what we were gonna charge for the rates, whether we were gonna charge a detail rate or a time and a half rate. It ended up that we had to charge the time and a half rate. So that was some of it. Some of the details when they were called in before, either be called in as Charlton Water, McClure Engineering, or Smith. That was the company that did so depending on who called it in, but it really should all just been called under the Charlton Water project. So billing had gone out to those respective companies for their addresses. So there was multiple issues with that project. But the things that we've corrected is as far as where we had antiquated addresses for some of the vendors, so where billing would go out and we weren't getting our monies in. So those we've identified in our documents as far as when they call in, who's calling it in, and where's the billing address. So we've
Okay.
made those improvements.
Any other questions so far? Yes, Peter.
Is the audit finished now, or is it, where is that? Because I thought they were gonna, when they finish, make recommendations as part of the audit, so I just wonder where that stands.
I can address that. Bill Freer will be coming back. He still has some hours left on this contract. He's waiting for us to get as far as we can, and then he will come back and make recommendations and see what we're doing.
So he's currently not working, he's waiting for us to finish, okay.
He wants to give us as much time as possible to clean up as much as we can.
Questions?
I think you've explained this once before, but why time and a half rate versus detail rate for projects inside the town?
If it's being paid by the town, it's paid. So if an officer works 40 hours for the town, it's beyond his or her work week, and under Fair Labor Standards Act, must be paid at 1.5 times. So easy, if a person made $40 an hour, you're gonna be paying them $60 an hour,
So that would be true in every town, Chief?
every town. Every town that, that's how they should be operated under FLSA.
But I think you understand how that seems wrong, that you charge your own town more than you charge a neighboring town.
Well, the other part of it is that if the project is paid by the vendor, like if this IMA works out and the water project goes forward, and the company that's awarded the contract for the construction. If they pay for the officers, then it'll be billed out at the detail rate.
Okay. Because it's not the town, it's the vendor.
Well, it's the idea, that's the process, though, you know what I'm saying? If you have 70 hours of work that's performed by officers in the town and XYZ company is billed, then, you know, but if it goes to Water Department, Charlton, then it's paid at time and a half.
Okay.
Well,
If
it
it's-
just seems a little strange that if you do detail work in the town of Webster, they get charged lower than if you do detail work here in our town.
But, I'm sorry,
I mean, Webster owes you $3,204. That's doing details down there, correct?
well, yeah, but that's for whoever they, Webster, that's for whoever they hired us for. Like, that's not for the town of Webster.
It's not for, okay, because it
And I
still
can
says
tell you-
Webster and Oxford Police and.
Yeah, okay, so those two, like, I'm working with Chief Bent. Those monies have not been paid out by the town of Charlton. Officers who work those haven't been paid for those when we've worked for those municipalities. So those monies are outstanding there, but the town has not paid those out. So we're trying to resolve with them. So if they don't have enough staff to work a gas line detail, and they
Right.
call us up, and we go over there to work for them,
Right,
okay? So the officer goes over there. We don't pay our officer to go work for them until they send us a check.
Excuse me. See if I got this right. You gotta bear with me, I'm a little slow today. So, if a Charlton officer goes to work for Webster,
Yep,
if he goes to work for Verizon,
Yep.
okay? He gets paid by the town of Charlton.
no. He gets paid by the town of Webster.
Okay, town of Webster issues him a check?
No, town of Webster issues the town of Charlton a check, and then we take out the deductions.
Okay, well, let's put it this way. Okay, you're saying that he's working for Webster, but the town of Charlton pays him. Are we paying his workman's comp? Are we paying his benefits for that time?
I don't know how that works out. Yes,
So technically, he's still working for the town. I mean, he might be under the direction of the town of Webster or a private contractor.
I respectfully, Mr. Proudy, I just would tell you that all of us, we don't have enough officers. We go to work for other towns work for us when we have projects. It's like when we have fires, you know, departments come in under mutual aid or what have you, and I would just say to you that the officer going out of town to do the work is, you know.
No, I don't have a problem with it. I'm just trying to get my arms around, you know, why is it time and a half for the town and not time and a half, because he's on our payroll.
Ms. Graver?
Fair Labor Standards Act requires after 40 hours, they need to be paid time and a half, or after 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we go through this just about every year, we have this conversation, and I come up and I pound my fists on the table about, what is it?
207K.
207K, which would allow us to only pay officers time and a half after 40 hours of work. We do not. We have the habit of paying them, if they've been on vacation or whatever, they go over the 40 hours, they get the time and a half under the Fair Labor Standards Act. It's more bookkeeping, it's harder. But I still think at times it's worth it when we start looking at things that you're asking for. So one, you need to know that the reason the difference is the time and a half is because if they're working for the town as an employee, and when they're working for details, either in another town or for a company, they are working details, which does not trigger the Fair Labor Standards Act. Is that a little more clear?
Yeah, it's very clear. Any other questions for the chief?
I have a question. Is
Sure.
it fair to say that, 45% of the deficit was recovered in the last 7 months? Almost half?
Well, it was 70,000 that we just collected in the last, how many weeks?
The last 2 months, January and February.
Okay. Thank you.
Was any of that total uncollectible or deemed inappropriate or billing errors, or how much of that total from when we first started talking about this has been uncollectible?
I haven't had anybody say that they were refusing to pay yet that we've been working with. What we had to do was provide them basically the work slip that the officer, for the day that he or she worked, and we had to send, along with our sheet, our billing sheet, our invoice, we had to, or a statement, corroborating, then they had to go and pull their files and corroborate it, so they're going through their archives just as much as we are through ours.
And have you adapted any changes to the policies that we were talking about earlier last year? Such that you wouldn't allow somebody with a deficit to be engaged in any...
We stopped working for charter. We only did one emergency detail, and I talked to the chairman before we did that. And, so before, but they had paid a significant amount of money up by that time.
So some of the changes to policies we were discussing was that anybody with an outstanding bill wasn't gonna be allowed after X amount of time.
After 90 days, right, we weren't gonna do work.
But I think the policy was 90 days, which didn't make a lot of sense to a whole bunch of us. But, so my question is, have we changed any of those policies? And is there anything different that you're acting on now?
I mean, we're sending out our statements. I mean, we have not, as far as other companies, we haven't stopped working for other companies because they've been paying.
So there's nobody over 90 days that still you're doing work for?
Not since we drew that line in October, so. Charter's the one that we're still waiting on for some, since that, in the FY14. I don't know what that is off the top of my head.
1,176. Further questions? Last night, Chief, at the Selectmen's meeting, I believe the discussion came up as to when this might be put to rest, and, looking at the 57,000 that goes further back. And it was said that we should be able to get a handle on this and be comfortable with the amount by the May meeting, hopefully. That's your target. Now, is that something you're comfortable with as a target, that in May we could say we're satisfied that we've got this in the right place?
Well,
is that what you...
I would just say to you, by May, we're hoping to have, these older numbers and tell you, the question that was raised by Mr. Tully, where there's some vendors, as we're reaching back out, that we haven't been able to collect. I haven't had that experience with a vendor as we've been going through them. Some of them are still, they're researching their documents, but, so it's a long process, but I'm hoping to have that number. The other thing that I said to Ms. Graver was the fact that if, whatever that number is, by May, that's not gonna stop. And if you take town action and pay that balance, write that balance off, we're not gonna stop collecting, and then I want whatever monies we would collect reflected, as we go forward, to show that we didn't just walk away from that.
Yes, Dan?
Just another question, and I'm sort of late to the dance here because I wasn't here for discussions a year ago or anything, but, so, we have this deficit that we have to eat. Now, how is the rate determined? I remember one time I was here and, you talked about there's a 10% processing fee.
We charge 10%. We can't charge Mass Department of Transportation or the school systems, they don't pay the 10% administrative fee or the 10% cruiser fee. But provide a cruiser, we charge 10%, so if it's $44 an hour, it's $4.40 for every hour there, you know, for like the cruiser fee, plus the $4.40 an hour for the administrative fee.
What I'm asking, and just bear with me, because, say, I don't know the history of the whole process, but if I was, you know, running my business, or anybody else running a business, they say, okay, well, we took a shellacking for this at one point in time. Maybe our profit margin, you know, which process fees and cruiser fees come into, you know, maybe we shouldn't be charging $48 an hour, maybe we should be charging $60 an hour. And I'm sitting here thinking, at some point in time, I'm gonna do a project and I'm gonna be one of the guys paying it, but at the end of the day, you know, what we're saying is we're gonna take a hit for maybe $80,000.
No, you won't take a hit for 80,000. I can tell you that right now. It's not the case, because you know, like the FY14 money, I mean, you're always gonna have money for active, so, I mean, if you take the monies owed from before and then you minus out the monies from the water and no, I don't see that. But regardless whether it's $5, I understand what you're saying, but I don't say.
Well, what's got me confused is we have a deficit balance here, okay? You know, I wouldn't call it a deficit if I had a receivable, if I had current receivables out there for $60,000, then I'd say I'd have a $60,000 deficit. But if I'm reading a deficit of 128, you know, and I know you're confident you can collect this, but, you know, also in this profit margin thought I have is, how much is it costing us to collect the money? You know, we're using the town accountant's time, we're paying for an auditor, and then the extra time you have to spend, and your staff has to spend doing this.
I understand, but, you know, like I said last night, I don't shrink away from the responsibility of how the process, okay, as far as how we were doing business. This isn't gonna be the norm when we right the ship. So the idea, but I knew I got my marching orders to do due diligence to recoup as much as we can. So this takes up an inordinate amount of time to call all these people and pull all the archives out and send this stuff and go back and forth, and then we go, you know, speaking with the town accountant and making sure that our figures match her accounting. So, because we don't want to be off when we provide, you know, the final documents. So, I mean, we come up here and, you know, we sit with her in her office, or my lieutenant comes up and we're working through this thing, so.
Chief, on a positive note, and Peter has something he'd like to ask you about, I think in a little bit of a way, you did yourself a disservice here, because you put the FY 2014 on there. We're only in the beginning of March, so if you look at your numbers and you have that 35,000, realistically, not that I like to have this deficit, you really have a deficit there that is 35,643 less, because that's an operating deficit. You're gonna always have a deficit, if I'm understanding you correctly.
I understand that, and then if you also take away, I told
Part of the
you,
water.
they take at least 13 out of the water.
So you're down to 80,000 rather than 128. And I don't like that. I'm just saying that if we look at, I think we need to look at it that way also. The number is better when we look at it that way.
Right,
So
but
I'm just saying that,
But
that's all.
but the idea is, I didn't want to come before you, the idea, and say, what's happening with the current year as
No,
well.
and I appreciate that, but I'm just saying, I think that needs an explanation to lean it a little more positive. That's all I'm saying.
Well, no, it's, obviously, if you do a detail today, and, you know, and then the officer gets paid next week, you know, when you're waiting to get paid by the vendor, yes, you know, the town has floated that money.
Right,
So-
but 80,000, that being said, 80,000 is about 80,000 too much for this. that we really need to not have this,
And-
but it's better.
And then if we're gonna check on this other 8,000, and that's either gonna be determined that it's still owed by the town to itself for the project. You know what I'm saying? So it's really, so that one, that's either gonna reconcile one way or the other, okay? That it was a duplicate billing, or that.
Or get paid.
Or get paid out of that project. So if you're saying 80, I mean, then you're down to 72.
Well, I like it going, I like that direction. Peter?
Two things. One, I don't think we can make recommendations or anything at this time until the audit is done, and you're done with as much as you can collect, and then at that time, I think that we could, probably between us and selectmen, if I would understand correctly, then make recommendations for the future. Second thing is, of the 57,000 that's prior to 2012, how much of that you think is obtainable, or where it's 3 years, 4 years old, that we're getting to the point that it's,
We've had checks come in for, 2009, 2010. You know, so,
so you're still going after that 57,000
oh yeah.
that's beyond those dates that we have? Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have a question for the chief?
Just one, oh, go
Okay,
ahead.
go ahead.
How, so there's a revolving account for the police details, correct? We've established a revolving account for the
Yeah, I think
town
40,000.
it's out of?
How much is it?
I think it's 40, is it?
It's an agency account rather than
Rev-
revolving.
and
The
it's-
town has appropriated like 28,000.
28.
28.
So does it have a fiscal maximum of expenditures?
No,
It doesn't have any safety valve on it? So if we
it's
put a
not a
safety valve,
departmental revolving account.
okay, but is there, so in the future, for a process control, wouldn't there be a way, if it was a revolving account, you could put a max annual expenditure on it? That you would need to all be precluded, everybody would need to be involved to override, right? So you at least wouldn't fall into this hole again?
The problem with the departmental revolving accounts is the volume is too high in this
Okay.
to fit, because there's a constraint as a 1% of the budget, and,
Okay,
so it wouldn't.
thank you.
So we'll learn. Yes, Dan?
Just going forward, I think there should be a mechanism where there's a very strong late fee that's charged. Because, you get the processing fee. To me, the cruiser fee is a wash, because it costs money to have a cruiser sitting out there.
There are some towns that don't charge it.
Nothing? Wow.
Yeah, so a lot of them have a flat fee too.
And if the state police do the job, they don't charge.
Well, again, as
And
Peter,
I'm not saying that that's right.
Yeah.
And I know some towns that their cruiser fees are higher.
Yeah.
The 10% administrative fee is pretty much a standard, and I'd have to look if that's
Yeah, that was
statutory.
as,
Statutory. So it's statutory that we can't charge more than 10% on the administrative fee.
right. As Peter said earlier, though, our recommendations can come later as we look at how it all fell out.
Yeah.
But certainly, when you sent us 23, 24 different towns, one of the things that I saw pop up more than once, and it looked attractive, was a standard fee, so that you wouldn't be micromanaging. You get a fee. If it's 4 hours, that's what, if it's 8 hours, you've used our cruiser, and if you apportion that correctly, you're not saying, well, it was 5 hours, it was 7 hours, I had the cruiser. I think just that extra paperwork can be a nightmare. And so if you had a standard fee, but again, we probably should save that until
Yeah.
we get a handle on
And
it.
I would just say to you, I'm not adverse, whatever is allowable by law for a municipality to assess for a late fee. I mean, as far as incorporating that.
Okay.
I would just ask,
Yeah, and I think,
don't claim to know the answer as far as what that should be and how it should be articulated.
I don't think we need to work those things out
No, but I
tonight, though,
mean,
because,
that's obviously, it's a business practice.
right,
Well,
and it's a good idea.
It's an incentive to pay Charlton first instead of another town.
Yeah.
If you're the
We-
vendor.
We could,
because it
we could
costs
use those
money,
incentives right
No,
now.
I know.
And,
Any other different questions for the chief? We can, we're all set? We'll be seeing you again, Chief, I know. We'll be talking about this more. Thank you for coming in. I appreciate that, and,
I'll be sending you whatever, you know,
yes,
whatever
and you do, right, I do get them. The reason I have not continued to send them on, you have sent a lot of them. It gives me an ability to look at it. It wasn't meant to have everybody check them off. Sometimes you're only paying one bill and enough emails, and our discussion was, let's make sure it's moving forward so that we can have these
But
discussions.
my plan is, as the future goes on, is that remains a process, whether you want to receive it, but that it's
It's part of the process.
part of the process. So that way, that nobody's sleeping at the switch.
Yep, that's good.
So the idea of by leaving it there, you can see what the activity is.
Yeah.
So it corroborates, you know, what we're doing. So.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chief.
Yep.
Appreciate it. And next on the agenda is the reserve fund. And I will address that to our town administrator. Do we have anything on the horizon? No problems? Well, that one's an easy one.
Good answer.
I like that answer. That's a solid answer. And for some of you at home who will end up watching this, I hope, the reserve fund is the fund that is administered by the Finance Committee for emergencies that come up, unforeseen circumstances. And so we don't like to use it too early in the year because we don't know what's coming later in the year. But the next thing on the agenda is the library meeting. Last week, I believe it was, we had a meeting at the library at Dexter Hall. And it was a meeting because they have a chiller at the library. The air conditioning modules outside, that we've had neighbors who have been complaining over a year about this, that it's noisy. We have had the Board of Health and others have stepped in to monitor this. And so we were trying to get all the boards together, which is obviously the best way is to get the Board of Health, get the library, get the finance, get everyone, get the people who are complaining, get the people to step up, sit down, see if we can solve it. And so we had that meeting. Several members of our board were there. And the meeting went well. It appears that the library will be seeking and has written a $32,000 grant for the repair of this chiller, which would include constructing a 12-foot wall around it to send the noise up and to protect the people from this. That's how the meeting ended, that we would wait to see how the grant went, and if we got the grant, and we would move forward from there. So I thought it was a very beneficial meeting. Anyone else have a comment who was there that would like to add to that or subtract from that? Hearing nothing on that, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is the Municipal Building Committee. That, again, I'll be doing some explaining occasionally because if people are watching, I think it's a good educational tool to explain what these are. The Municipal Building Committee is a committee that talks about all the town buildings and what might be needed to keep them up. Our liaison to that committee, because we cannot serve, Finance Committee cannot serve on another, a Finance Committee member cannot serve on another committee of any kind. But you can be an unofficial, non-voting member to it and bring the information back and certainly supply them with information. Peter Cooper is our member on that board, and we can hear from Peter now.
Okay. So they talked about the ice house. We have a 5-year plan. And it's not too much each year. It's like $1,000, $1,500 each year to put that back in place. There's already been quite a bit of work done to it. The roof is done. Some other major things are done.
Could you take just a second and tell them what the ice house is?
The ice house is a building that the town owns, that I believe the Historic Commission got it when they part of it, and it's only one of two, I think, in New England that it's an ice cellar where they store the ice for the winter. So it is a historical building, and it's not going to take too much really to put it back in shape. So we've got a 5-year plan to do that now. The lower space in the senior center, the air conditioning is done in that section. And up above on the same wing, they're doing some plans, and Kurt was looking into a couple of different methods of air conditioning at the upper part. On that, just go through, Dresser Hill bathrooms are, I guess they're almost completed. The town hall HVC electrical panel has been upgraded and done. On Fay Mountain Farm, we talked about what they would do. And I think right now Kurt is supposed to be getting some estimates on 3 different ways of proceeding. If we take part of the building down, or if we fix the other part, or what we do. So he's supposed to come back with some monies on that, some figures on that. And basically that was it.
Any questions on that?
Yeah,
Yes.
the ice house, and maybe I misunderstood you, you said $1,000 to $1,500 a year.
Yeah, for 5 years. The roof is done, the front door is done, some inside, the sill needs to get jacked up and fixed. I don't know if I have that with
Why
me.
are we doing that? I don't.
It's a
see the
town-owned building,
It's a town-owned building.
and we have the responsibility to
Where
take care of it.
But do people actually
What
use it?
street is that? Bar?
What benefit
Where
does
is
it serve? Yeah, I don't even know where it is.
I think it's, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it
Is it on Bond Road? Where is, I mean,
We don't know where it is.
can't think.
and I've seen it, I can't think, it's not coming to me right now exactly where the road is. No, it's not something you can actually use.
Then why do we wanna maintain it?
Well, there are, we maintain statues, and we can't move into those either, so.
Right, but we don't pay $1,500 a year for them.
But it's
Well,
true, this is only
we've
repair.
paid
It's a, yeah.
thousands of dollars for Dresser Hill, since we bought that and
Yeah,
done that.
shored that barn up and did some
And-
things there.
and-
It's a town-owned,
People actually go in there and do stuff.
Right.
we would have to vote as a
The
town to say
number
we
2
don't want this building
schoolhouse,
anymore, sell it.
they
Okay,
put
I'm just
in.
expressing
No,
concern. I don't
It-
see the
good,
value.
fine.
Part of the municipal building committee is responsible for all of town buildings. And the town voted to have that as one of their town buildings, so.
Is this a historical building?
Yes. it
Yes.
is. Yeah, and that was historic commission.
I'm sorry? Yes.
Yeah.
And it's
When
just,
did the town vote to support this thing at $7,500 over the next 5 years?
There was,
I never remember hearing
it
anything about
was,
this,
it was on the,
Missed that town meeting.
just our commission did it, I don't remember the date, it was quite,
recently, or?
Isn't that something private?
No.
ones could do?
probably at least 10 years plus ago.
no, when you say the historic commission, that every town must have by state law an historic commission. That is different than what I'm president of, the Historical Society. That's private with Ryder Tavern. So the town has to have them, and they examine, in this town, they've got all the town records, the old records, they've put them back in shape, and they have a budget. Part of that budget was for this purpose. The last time that they had a very large
Yeah,
budget.
they had like $10,000 at one time.
They,
Now,
well,
I think it's
they had
500.
10,000, but they got 7,000 from us as part of the, to take care of papers from, that was, I can tell you there in a moment, that was 2005, was the last time that, before the big fall, that, when they got a $7,000 budget. Before that, they would get 2,000, 3,000, and a good piece of that would be to do these kinds of things. So it wasn't a separate thing on town meeting. Otherwise, we'd have heard that, yeah. It was part of their budget.
So
and, yeah.
where does this 7,500 come from over the next 5 years?
They have a building.
I
fund
wasn't
for-
at the
for
meeting.
Maintenance, and generally, I think they take it out of that.
There's a, yeah, Robin, there's a maintenance fund for
Right.
all town buildings.
Right.
This is, as Peter said, this has come up as a subject of topic at the municipal building committee and what their responsibility is. We've been talking about 5-year capital plans, and we've asked the people who are, because with some of these buildings, you know, you have certain people that will kind of shepherd them and watch out for them. We're very lucky that way. We have volunteers that care. We had one of the members of the municipal building committee came back with a 5-year plan, did an assessment for us, and said, here's what needs to happen. You will see in one of the documents that I've given you is the capital plan. I believe I had left it on. added it into the capital plan. It's called the ice cellar. And what we have is, earmarked for this year is 4,000, then there's 3,800, 3,900, 45, 28. It's just basically in there. But this year, I think that the agreement of the municipal building committee was to wait and see what they could do and see if they could fund some of the repairs out of the municipal building repair regular line items. So usually we try to hold off on repairs, and then towards the end, we know that we're not gonna have some great big catastrophe. We can pick a couple of projects to take care of towards the end of the year, and that's how, I think the municipal building, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, has talked about doing this.
Yeah,
So they really haven't been clear whether or not to try and fund it as a small amount, $1,000 out of the line item that we get, or to just put it on the capital.
and we did this same thing with number 2 Schoolhouse Historic Society when we took over kind of the overseeing of that. And I did a 5-year plan on that. And basically, really, it was only 3 years that we did improvements, and it wasn't a lot of money. It was 800, fixed the back, fixed some shingles on the roof. I think we had the furnace cleaned, so it was probably under $2,000. But once that's spent, now it's not gonna leak, and the last probably 3 years, I don't think the town spent any money on it. Once you have a building like that in shape, and then it's, basically, it doesn't cost you anything. And some of the big stuff, when the historic commission already had, when they had a budget, they was taken out of their budget, they did, the roof was a big thing, and the sides and some of the other things, so.
If I might interject here, Peter, it's a perfect time. The number 2 schoolhouse, the contract is up in March. We're going to have to talk about renewing that contract with the Historical Society. We maintain the inside, we've got the exhibit set up, we show people, we set it up when people want to see it, we show them, but we turn to the town if it needs, although Peter and I have done repairs over there that we don't charge the town. They're simple things. If we're painting something, we don't care. But other than that, we ask the town to assist. And the building's tight and in good shape now. But getting back to your question, which was a fair question, it's always a fair question. Why do we have this? Why are we spending money on it? A lot of the buildings are historic, and we're just, you have a choice. Either take care of the building now, pay me now or pay me later, or sell the building, or.
Right, I comprehend that when this community can actually use it, but in the case of an ice house, what can we possibly use it for? To store ice?
It's a historical artifact.
There we go.
And,
It's hard for me to answer that as a historical society member, because I find value in keeping those, but some of you younger people may not.
Sounds like a shed.
No,
Yeah.
it's one of 2 in the state,
State,
so we got
it's-
one
yeah.
of the most
There's more
historical
information on the
places in
website,
town.
Charlton
It's so
website.
important that we don't know what road it's on and nobody's ever been.
It's actually on Fitzgerald Road.
Can you go in
There's
it?
more information
Fitzgerald
on
Road.
the town, on the town
Can you go in it?
website.
Yeah, you can go in it, yeah. I mean, there'd be no need, you'd go in and say, it's cold in here. But, yes, you can go in it, yeah.
Okay.
In
It
fact, the
just
doors were fixed
I mean, it looks
recently.
like we're gonna be spending close to $4,000 a year on this for a long time.
Well, I'm not familiar with those numbers because I wasn't obviously at the meeting for this,
Just-
but,
I don't think I have those.
Just seems like an awful lot.
Yeah, so the 15, if this capital plan is approved as is, there's 4,060 and 14, there's 3870 and 15, there's
Okay.
3,900 in the next year, 4,500 the year after that. There's some important money going here to something that, okay, it's an artifact, I get that, but it seems like the upkeep of this is on the expensive side.
Well, here's a question. How big is this building? Is it 10 by 12?
Oh,
Is
it's
it the
bigger than
size
that.
of a barn?
You could put probably 3 cars in it, so,
This is the
20
size of
by,
a
20 by
three-car.
16 maybe?
yeah, maybe
20
20
by
by 20,
16.
I
somewhere
mean,
in there.
is this something, spend a little more money and move it up to the historic district? And then, when you give school children the yearly tour of the
Well,
historic district, you explain the
There
ice
was talk about
operation.
moving it over to Fay Mountain Farm area, but the idea is to move it, it would be very, very expensive, because your whole cellar, you'd wanna create that the way it was.
You put the stone and all, for the thickness,
Yeah.
for the ice, yeah.
Because at Fay Mountain Farm, one time there was an ice house.
Oh, I'm sure there are 20 of them in town.
Oh, there were.
No, they were everywhere,
There
yeah.
were at least 20.
I can as I'm looking at these numbers are new to me, because I'm not on that committee now. I'm kind of leaning, I like historic things, obviously, an awful lot, but I'm kind of leaning to what Dennis, it seems, I don't know what I don't know here, but when I was on the committee, we were looking at 700-800 to fix a piece, and then we need another 500 or 600. So, Dennis, I'm gonna have to get some answers to that too, because I do not know, that's pretty large numbers. We're well over 25,000 there, and I'm wondering, what are they doing? I just don't, I don't know the answer.
Let's go find the 5-year capital plan again to bring us in.
Yeah, and because we're just talking about something none of us really know the answer to, and
Well, we didn't
Yeah.
have that till just recently.
Yeah,
We didn't
okay.
have a 5-year plan. They was kind of like
Yep.
winging it. We had a little money extra in the building fund, so they would go fix a couple of doors and stuff, so, but we
Well-
said we wanted to know exactly what this is gonna cost.
Right. And I'd need to know, because we're just spinning our wheels here, none of us know.
And I'll admit that if you look at the bottom of that capital, there's two pieces. One is called and these are draft recommendations that I wanted to talk to you about.
Okay.
Which is debt exclusion and annual town meeting funding. So I have not brought all the backup documentation for all the other things because I didn't.
Which one you
Right.
go
looking at?
into that tonight, but I will get all that information if you'd like.
This one?
Hold on a second. So let's move on to the next one.
One other question.
yeah, sure.
On the municipal building updates.
Okay.
There's also still a line item here, it's in red, I don't know what that means, for the roof of Fay Mountain Farm for $60,000.
It's in, when you look at things that I've given you and if it's in red, it means that I need to go back and relook at it and there's some extenuating circumstances, it's not in stone.
So that
It's
was
red.
overwhelmingly denied at last town meeting.
I have had people ask me to bring it back. But I have also heard that there is supposedly a grant fund, so we're waiting to hear that.
Okay. So that will be an issue to come up. Certainly, this board was not in favor.
After the visit to that location, I think we had a little bit of a chat about all the other problems other than the roof.
We did. We had a site visit to that location. The select board and the finance committee and the town administrator have been going out to different sites and looking at the buildings in town. We did go there a few weeks back, and there are a number of issues, and I think earlier, part of that was addressed when Peter said they're looking at possible options. What is most savable, the whole thing, pieces, what can be repaired? So there are a lot of options that are being looked at, and I think probably we should put that off from tonight. Yes, sir.
With respect to the site visits, since the site visit to the police department, I've been in touch with Prism that works under Mass Electric, that does the energy,
Audits?
efficiency audits. So they're going to be sending out, we've had two done during my tenure, that we've done upgrades. But one of the questions raised because was the HVAC and, any other improvements that we can make. But I said to them, if they came out, I wanted the vendor that would come out to do an analysis of it and give us what it would cost to upgrade, remove, to have an energy efficient. Because that was one of the discussions, because one of the issues obviously is the ductwork was never properly insulated, and then other things that might be needed. So with the cost of electricity always continuing to go up. So I asked for that audit to be done, and I will provide the town administrator and your board and obviously the building
With the results.
with the results of that.
Thank you.
And so if there's a big number to say redo the HVAC, I present that to you, and then a decision can be made, if that's a capital project that we want undertaken, and what fiscal year that would fit into, so.
Thank you. Yes,
Excuse me.
just a minute, Chief.
Just a counterpart to that. I've taken advantage of that program for some of my buildings, and I would think that maybe you get an advantage being the public sector, the private sector, but basically, they've gone into maybe 8 or 10 of my buildings, like the warehouse buildings, replace all the lighting. They picked up 80% of the cost.
Correct.
My tenant picked up 20% of the cost, but the way they run the program is, you know, let's say, let's just use a number like $2,000. They say, okay, you're gonna save $110 a month. So we're gonna finance $100 a month for 20 months. So it's really, it's free. So,
Well, you have several options, and a lot, I mean, we've done it where I've paid it up front, as opposed to, you know, putting it in and paying it, prorating it. So, I mean, I'll produce all what they recommend and how a payment would be done. Like I said, I've had it done twice, and I could tell you that, you know, with the lighting and, you know, it's a great program, but obviously it benefits everybody, because now the energy that National Grid saves that was coming into your building, they can resell it to somebody else. So it stretches it further. But, so they are gonna come at some point, and, because Prism, what they do is they have a subcontractor that comes out and does the evaluation, and then at some point, then you decide what work you wanna have done or not done, and go on. But we've had 2 upgrades, though,
yeah,
since.
it is a great program.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next item, this will be brief. There's a roundtable meeting, our second meeting. We have invited the same people that we invited last time, and I believe the Planning Board and EDC will be coming to this meeting. It's next Thursday. I will send you a reminder, March 13th, Thursday, down in the Senior Center. 6 o'clock? Senior Center. Okay? Now, the next 2 item, not the next 2, but the next 1 item, and final, I think we'll take 8 and 10 together, and then we'll get the joint financial planning. I'll get that out of the way right now. We have a joint financial planning meeting. That's the one that we have with Dudley. I'm sorry? And that's the 25th of March on a Tuesday at the middle school, Charlton Middle School, 6 to 8. And I will be posting for that. I will also send you a reminder for that when that's coming. That's the one we have every year, the kickoff meeting. It's, like I said earlier, the superintendent will be there, and we'll have the school committee, and we'll have financial people from both towns, selectmen from both towns, and it's a very beneficial meeting for us. Okay, now on the projects to gain efficiency, and I misspelled efficiency. Anyway, looking at that, I'll turn that over to the person that wanted to have that on the agenda, and Kristen?
That was me, yeah.
Yeah.
So I emailed Frank because I had no idea, but I'm sure that all the department heads do. I asked if there was any way we could find out what all the departments are doing to conserve resources. Basically, just, I look at it as if you know, to make the case that people are really good fiduciaries of the money they're handed. I'm sure there's a million things going on that, you know, we haven't heard about in terms of how they're saving money, or how they're saving resources, or how they're going green, or, I mean, right here you have a paperless initiative, so that's kind of an example of what I was looking for. Across all, I mean, there must be a laundry list. So I was just curious to see if there's a way to find out. I'm sure citizens would love to know. And
You could put together a survey from the finance committee to the departments and ask them questions.
that's a great idea.
Would you do that for us?
Yeah, sure. Can I just do it over the internet and email it to people? Is that all right? Like Survey Monkey?
Or should it go through you? I think it should go through her, really, if possible, yeah.
So do you want me to make it on Survey Monkey and forward it to you for approval? And then you can send it out when you feel like it, or?
Sure, why don't you just send it to me, we'll have a
Perfect.
conversation about it, make sure it gets at what you're interested in. I
Yeah.
can check with some department heads to make sure that it's understandable,
Right.
and it makes sense, you know, what you're looking for, and we'll get it out.
Perfect. So, the reason this came into, when I was doing the research on the data that Peter was looking for, I ended up reading a whole bunch of annual reports from every other town around here. And it came into my mind that, you know, in Leicester, they just put solar panels on 3 schools and the police department. And in other places, they did other things, you know, put them in fields, parking lots. And I thought to myself, okay, well, what are we doing? I haven't heard anything yet. So that's how I said, I'm sure stuff's going on, it just hasn't been publicized. And that's
Or
basically.
it has and it's gone by.
Yeah.
It certainly could have.
We did it, been there, done that, and moved on, yeah.
You know, it's good to know. I had a laundry list here. I mean, they had paperless initiative, solar projects, geothermal, wind projects. There was all kinds of stuff popping up all over the place. Then my second question, which,
Before you get to that one,
Yeah.
you've got actually three, because I want you to do the update on the stipend,
Oh,
too.
sure, I'm gonna
But
go back.
yeah, before you get to that, just the windows in this building is an example that
Sure.
addresses, and a lot of money was spent on these windows, and that was just for that purpose. We've done some work on the heat. So that's part of municipal
even-
building committee.
Even hot water in the
So-
building, they put a small, like, 1 gallon tank right underneath, like, where the sinks are.
Got rid of an
'Cause they-
80 gallon that we had before.
2 80 gallons that
Yeah,
they
that
had.
they had, yeah.
then do we reiterate back to the people of the town what was saved?
No, I think your question
Yeah.
is great. If you're asking a question, then there are many people that don't know the answer, so the survey is excellent
So
to find that
we
information.
put in the windows and we changed out the water tank, so there must be some.
There are
sort
many
of-
other things, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Like, well,
And the
I'm saying,
chief has
like-
done things down at the station,
Yeah.
and it would be a great thing to get all of that.
But the list of projects is one thing, but the list of gains is the point I'm,
Well, yeah, that'll come with it.
Measurable gains will be difficult. Department heads probably will not know how to explain a gain if they've upgraded their boiler. I mean, maybe that actually might be an easier one to try and
Yeah.
figure out, but, certain gains, I don't know.
you would think it would be reflected right in their utility bill. I mean,
Well, they don't get the utility bill, so a department head would not receive the
Yeah.
bill.
oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they wouldn't know it. It
So
would
that
be,
would go to a
it's an
different
overall
department.
utility bill, so they'd have to find out what's my portion. And like Robin said, it'd be hard to figure out what's my piece of this building. You know there's a savings overall, but then electricity goes up, you've got a few more offices. It's hard to put a number to it, but you know well that
There's gotta be
that it's a
some way to
good move.
quantify the gains
Some
of doing the
type of way to
project,
quantify,
right?
yes.
Yeah, okay, so do
Can-
you want me to go back?
Just give us the update on the stipend, and then we can move on to the community
Can I
project.
ask a quick question? Has the municipal building committee looked into energy efficiency, like getting solar panels on municipal buildings, or?
We haven't looked into that, as far as I know, my memory on it.
About 3 or 4 years ago, we talked about that kind of thing. We did, yes.
Yeah, that would have
Yeah,
been
it would
before,
not-
When I was on,
on
before
it.
you were on.
Yeah.
A lot of our buildings are older and whether or not.
Cannot support those?
Yeah,
Because CMS is a
Part of the
tenant,
problem.
right?
Hmm?
It's,
It was about whether or not it was cost efficient and whether or not the roofs could actually handle it.
I mean, like the police department should be able to
right,
handle
the
that.
middle school, I would
The
think
middle
would be
school?
perfect.
middle school should be able to handle it.
I would just tell you though,
Yeah.
if you, like, if you do the police department, you should be doing the
Do the roof
roofing
first.
of it at the same time.
Do the roof first.
I understand that.
Yeah,
For the library.
Because even like with this winter, I had some ice back up and I have staining in the dispatch area, so even the repairs that we did before, with the way the winter has been, so it would require the investment of the roof and putting the panels on it.
but why don't we wait, okay, go
We've
ahead.
never actually had a study to say, if we had solar panels put on the police department, it would save us this much per year.
No, I haven't.
May not be a bad idea.
Okay, can we get to
The
the,
library, I mean, that's a brand new flat roof, right?
in the back part?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it might not be
But it-
structurally sound.
They also has to be in the right direction to get,
It's got fields behind it.
to
and
get, to
suddenly-
get, to get the maximum efficiency from the solar, cause, I happened to be down Home Depot and I looked into it for my house. And, it has to have a good southern exposure. Plus, there was also credits where they were gonna install it and put it in for nothing. And give you money
Yeah.
on top of that with credit, for tax credit, so, I don't know, it could be, but it all depends on the direction of the house and what's in front of it, and if there are any trees, they have a guy come down and look at your area.
All worth looking into.
And it tells you
Right.
the whole thing.
So Leicester just did 2 school buildings and the police station. And West Brookfield and Warren just did all 3 of their school buildings, roofs. These are all roofs. So if their roofs are in good enough shape, I don't see why our roofs aren't in good enough shape.
Well,
You know?
the schools are a different animal. You'd have to go to the school. We have not got any
See,
purview over that.
Here's an example. My partner and I own over 300,000 square feet of roofs. We get calls every day, we wanna come out, we wanna rent your roof. And when Nexium called me last week, I said, what are you gonna pay me per square foot for roof? And he says 16 cents. I says, and if I have to replace my roof, it's $3 a foot. So, then the other thing is, they're out there, there's 100 of these people looking to rent roof space, right? But they won't indemnify or guarantee your roof. Now, when the library was, redesigned for the addition, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, might be longer, time flies, especially the older you get. Anyway, the engineer, the structural engineer probably wasn't even factoring in putting solar panels on the roof. And it's not the weight of the solar panels, except for when you have a winter like now and you have ice that starts to build up around there. Then you get a high-low effect. On the south side, it starts melting. On the north side, and it's a fulcrum. And this does a lot of damages to roofs, as well as the structural buildings, cracked walls, and this type of thing. So, this is something you have to be very cautious, because all the guys that have called me, I said, who's your structural engineer? Well, this was all designed. I said, well, who's the structural engineer? And what kind of insurance policy you're gonna give me, or bond, that my building doesn't get damaged after? And I've never got that answer. So, who knows, 3 years from now, you might be reading about Leicester's school roof falling in, so.
I don't know, they've been up there a while.
Well,
Anyway, it's
let's
worth
not, yeah,
investigating.
let's,
It's just an idea. to
let's
gain
move
efficiency.
forward with the survey. I think it's a great idea to at least find out what's been done.
Send us a letter.
Yeah.
And I would recommend your question about the school roofs on the 25th when we meet. That would be a great
Perfect
question
time,
to
yep,
ask
when we have the joint,
school.
yep. Perfect time to ask the school. So let's go to the update on stipend research. This is also from,
Yeah, so, Peter, had asked at the last meeting if we could get a little bit more data on, surrounding towns' stipend expenditures. And, what I did was I looked at the existing survey, that's out on the Dropbox, and, we already had, Oxford and Sturbridge in here for surrounding towns. So I looked up, Southbridge had no information online whatsoever. Dudley has some information out there, but it's completely not in a useful format at all. So I pulled West Brookfield, which is not exactly bordering, but it's close, and Leicester. But the data they have out there is not nearly as up to date as what you have for your survey. Your survey was last fall of 2013. That's pretty up to date. This is West Brookfield. I found 2012 annual report. And Leicester, the most recent one was 2010. So it's a little more dated, but they do pay stipends to all of the same categories that you have listed on the spreadsheet. In some cases, they pay more, and in some cases they pay less. I put the entire list out on the Dropbox so you guys could all see it. I put data for 3-5 meeting, that's the name of the file. So you can all peruse that and see what you think. That's about it on that.
I'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting so that when people have a chance to look at it at home, we can have some comments, right?
Yep.
And then want to move to the community improvement projects that you had brought up.
Oh, so that's another item that came to mind when I was reading all the annual reports. So I could see listed in the reports basically the initiatives that they were taking to invest in the community. Besides the normal operating things, outside of trucks and cars and maintaining buildings, things like sidewalks and parks and just things to improve the overall quality of life and the health of the community. So I just asked, is there any way we could get a list of that sort of initiatives overall? Reading those reports gave me a million questions. I could have sent you 9, but I just picked 2.
Okay, so new rules. Leave the reports alone, don't read them.
No, don't give me any more
Okay.
research to do then. Yeah.
I like that you're doing the research.
It's great that you're doing the research.
If you wanna give me a call, probably it's difficult to kind of come off the top of my head with a list
Sure.
for you at the meeting, but if you wanna give me a call, I can go right down, because there are things that we've done, and there's things that we're doing, and, maybe we do need to get that word out a little bit more.
Right.
Certainly in tight financial times, we're not able to do sidewalks and things like that, but I can tell you how long I've had a grant out, and every year we put it out there, so.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. The next item first, before I get to number 11, I would like to tell you there's an all boards meeting on April 8th, Tuesday. April 8th, I will send you a reminder on that one. And that is at 6:30 in the senior center. That's the all boards meeting that we have twice a year. And all the boards come in and share information about what's going on with their board. So we'll hear more about that one coming up. And number 11 on our on our agenda is meetings on cable that I'm hearing that pretty soon we'll be televising our meetings. Oh, it's too late. We are. Okay, we're all set. So that's nice that we're televised. I think that as many meetings as possible from all boards should be televised. And we have Drew back there televising us. I'm not supposed to use his name, so I won't say his name is Drew, and he's back there doing that for us. He does a great job, by the way, so I'd like to say that publicly. He's very good at this. Although I've not seen my name pop up on the bottom yet, and the selectmen get that, but hey, I digress. So the next one is what the Finance Committee does best, budget. And I will now turn that over to, Robin, could you please move over where they can, and the town administrator will now fill us in with a little information as we really begin the budget season. And she will fill us up with information here.
So, congratulations on your first night of going paperless.
Yes, this is interesting.
So,
Old
how's it
people
working
aren't
so
usually
far?
good at this.
This is
You
good.
can't get Angry Birds to work.
I tried to look at what you were doing over there.
I noticed he was
Every
hitting
once
it
in a
rather
while, I'd
often, yeah.
snicker.
Are the hockey scores on there?
Yeah. He's checked already.
All right, so I have several things for you. If you go into the meeting folder that I provided you on Dropbox,
Meeting.
you will find
Right in there, all this
a budget message.
Turn it this
You
way,
will find the capital, which I think you've already opened up, and you'll find a very, very
And you'll be all
preliminary
set.
draft budget. I usually go through my budget message. If you want me to do that, I can.
I would like that.
Sure.
Okay. Does anybody need water before I get started? Okay. All right. In what's been described in the last 6 years as the worst economic decline since the Great Depression, Charlton has continued to provide excellent services to its residents in the areas of public safety, human services, education, and financial services. As this budget message was being prepared for FY15, I'm encouraged that we have maintained services and modestly increased some budgets that were in deficit of being unable to function, but are no means by out of the woods economically. The state has reported that the economy is on the upswing and that state revenues have increased, but as you know, there's a trickle-down effect from the federal government to the state government to municipalities. This year, local aid is proposed by the governor to be level funded. When local aid is level funded, it represents a cut by the mere fact of inflation, and the current budget numbers are based on the governor's local aid numbers. You have made hard choices in the past years, reducing municipal budgets, departments to bare bones, but for the most part, you have been able to keep the current level of service Charlton residents have come to rely upon. Over the next couple of years, maintaining essential services such as public health, public safety, education, safe transportation will continue to be challenging. Last year, as you know, town meeting had hoped to increase in the areas of public safety and education, but those increases proved not to be sustainable by the majority, as noted by the failure of an $800,000 override. Charlton worked hard to continue to provide municipal services even though cuts were made. Since FY 2007, elected officials have lost their health insurance and 50% of their stipends. Department expense budgets were reduced. As an example, the selectmen lost 18%, assessors lost 42%, highway lost 23%, road repair 67%, police 14%, and fire lost 15%. And managers tightened their belts and performed. Over the years, many departments have also received reductions to their state funds that were channeled for standalone projects such as library programs and policing monies. As in the past years, the financial principles used to prepare this draft budget for FY15 include current revenues must be generally sufficient to support current expenditures. Debt is not to be used to fund current operating expenditures, and strong reserves are to be maintained. Adequate contingency funds are maintained. Sufficient maintenance and replacement dollars are included to ensure capital facilities and equipment are properly maintained, and the budget strives to maintain the quality of services currently provided. The following summary provides an overview of revenue and expense projections and recommendations for FY15, as well as update for the FY14 financial situation. So if we start with the FY14 budget update, which is the year we're in now, which started July 1st. The FY14 balanced budget for the general fund was funded in the amount of $23,182,305 at the annual town meeting in May, of which $596,012 was appropriated from the stabilization fund. In October, special town meeting agreed to skip funding capital, and an $800,000 override failed, which was earmarked to fund the following. And just to remind you what that $800,000 was supposed to fund, it included $300,000 to support and sustain the state-required minimum school spending increase for Dudley Charlton Regional School District for FY15, $130,000 above minimum assessment for the schools in FY15, so we had anticipated another increase this year above what we had last year. $70,000 for the 19th police officer, $70,000 for the fire prevention officer, $20,000 for library operations, $10,000 for the new highway building operations. As you remember, we've built a new building but had no new additional monies outside the budget for operating, so we've kind of squeezed that into the monies that we have. $50,000 to increase training for firefighters and police, $65,000 to add one full-time dispatcher and the benefits, and that is new. That would have been a new position. $40,000 to restore various general government expense accounts. $20,000 to increase number of spots for the senior work-off program, and $25,000 to hire a full-time veterans agent and provide for increase in requested benefits, veterans benefits due. Paid for, so some of these we have actually squeezed into the budget, and I say squeezed because they've taken the increases that we've had, and we have, again, as I've said, $596,000 from stabilization is what we use to accomplish some of these things. $80,000 from Millennium Funds was transferred in a separate warrant article into stabilization fund for capital. The stabilization balance is presently $1.3 million. The town approved several increases to its FY14 budget over the FY13 budget, including we had an additional debt of $71,000, which is 10%. The library was increased by $44,000, which was 14%. Council on Aging expenses, almost $5,000, which was 23% of their budget. Education, $577,000, which was 4.9%. General government was $119,000, which was 3.1%. Worcester County Retirement System was $35,000, which was a 5.3% increase, and the assessor's expense, almost $5,000, was a 27% increase. Lastly, insurance was $50,000, and that was about a 3.7% increase. Also, the past 2 years, voters have made the following changes in personnel. The conservation agent from part-time to full-time and with additional duties covering GIS mapping and recreation costs, costing an additional $24,000, and I'm going to round these up instead of saying the 100 numbers. The new library youth services assistant at an increase of $20,000, $4,000 to the fire department budget for additional call firefighters, $7,800 for emergency management director stipend, upgraded 3 highway workers for an additional $12,000. The assistant treasurer went from part-time to full-time for an additional $11,000, and 1 full-time police officer at an increase of $70,000. 1 full-time fire prevention officer at an increase of $71,000. Increase the library custodian from 19 hours to 35 hours at an increase of almost $10,000, and a wage increase from $12 to $15 per hour. A total increase from FY13 to 14 with increases are $10,000. The veterans agent went from a stipend of $9,200 to $35,821 because of a retirement of the town And the town is required to have a full-time agent because of its population, and it's over 10,000. The FY14 annual town meeting reaffirmed its desire to have a 19th officer, an additional firefighter, but when it came to an override to fund the positions, it didn't pass, and they were eliminated in the budget. You have a chart there that shows you personnel, the townwide changes, increase in history, and actual wages. FY15 revenue and expenditure forecast. Do you have any questions about the FY14 budget before I go on to the proposed? Okay. So for the proposed FY15 revenue and expenditure forecast. Budget forms were sent out and have been returned by most departments. Instructions requested that any increases in the department budgets other than negotiated personnel increases would need to be justified through documentation and not be over 2.5%. The town continues to struggle mostly because of uncertain new growth and low receipts, lingering effects of the economic recession, increasing use of stabilization funds for the operating budget, level funding from the state, and substantial increases in Charlton schools' assessments. The budget presented is a continued reflection of these fiscal conditions. First, let's look at the revenue forecast for FY15. You will see, and you actually do have a revenue forecast in there. I think it's the first page of the budget, so it's attached to the budget. The budget presented is continued reflection. Let's look at the FY15. You'll see, based on the information we have presently, an amount of $23 million will be available for appropriation without the use of stabilization funds. This includes an estimate of FY14 snow and ice deficit of $120,000 charged against the revenue. There are several assumptions that make it difficult for the finance team to forecast a higher amount. New taxes, Proposition 2.5 has provided new revenues each year, beginning with $188,000 in 2002 and $388,000 in 2014. The Prop 2.5 tax increase for FY15 is estimated at $402,000. New growth revenues, the highest year's new growth was $689,000 in 2007, and the lowest was in 2012, just 2 years ago, at $160,000. And if you remember, in FY2012, new growth we estimated at $260,000, but it actually came in at $160,000, requiring a reduction in the budget. The FY14 was estimated at $138,000 for town meeting, and the assessor's office is recommending at this time $140,000 in the amount of new growth. Today I did send her the information from the town planner on the upcoming projects, and she is recalculating to take a look and see if she sees anything else that's coming. But generally, as you know, she stays conservative, and that's done Charlton very well. She does not count additional new growth or project it until it's actually being built. So you can see our track record under new growth. It has gone down, and I think that is reflective of the economic times that we've lived through in this state and across the country. The average total tax increase from new growth and Proposition 2.5 between 2009 and 2014 is $550,000, with a high being $603,000 in FY13 and a low of $505,000 in FY10. FY15's estimated new tax growth is $542,000. Below is a chart that reflects new growth history from 2007 to present. The Charlton Town Planner, Alan Gordon, has reported in his calendar year of 2013, he saw even greater continuation of significant increase in the planning board related development that began in 2010 in the categories of pre-application, project design, application review, and permit issue, field management. In 2014, the development information is based upon information received and/or confirmed from developers and their project representatives regarding projects that our respective parties indicate that they are fully committed to developing this year. It is important to note that as in any year, there will be many additional local development projects that will receive permits that undergo field construction, of which we're unaware of at this point. If you don't mind, I'm going to skip through the non-development, unless you'd like me to go through what we're anticipating.
No, we can read that part over quite well.
So there, you have some non-residential development that we talk about, some residential development that we talk about. And Mr. Gordon believes that Charlton's consistent increase in subdivision and A&R activity, combined with information from applicants who have received or plan to apply in 2014 for planning board issued reduced frontage and/or common driveway special permits, supports the expectation that the new 2003 new housing construction activity in Charlton totaling 50 houses will be, at least continue, and most likely increase in 2014. Deborah Ciccarini, the Director of Assessing Department, is cautious and reports that it's the expert opinion of the Board of Assessors and the Director of Assessing to continue to use a very conservative estimate for new growth for budget purposes, as I've mentioned already. The economy is still volatile, and until assumptions of new construction actually become permitted and the occupancy is imminent, we should only remain cautiously optimistic on the pipeline. Projects detailed in the town planner's outline for FY14. New growth dated January 24th, 2013. FY14 growth estimate is still down as of March 13th. The updated potential estimate of value for new growth is as follows, and you can see her chart. I will let you go through that. You'll find attached also, the building commissioner is working on a report, and I will get that to you, which we will be attaching to this. Stabilization funds for the operating budget. The general stabilization is a funding source that many towns use when cuts seem unbearable, but it only holds off the inevitable. Either cut expenses or expand revenues. Operating budgets generally should be funded with stable, reoccurring sources. Historically, the town has utilized the general stabilization funds to supplement the operating budget in a planned and thoughtful manner to move the town and its services through what has been coined a great recession over the past several years. This year was an exception. As town meeting opened, the Finance Committee's recommended balanced budget and added additional monies for school and police, increasing the recommended amount from $382,000 to $596,000. This is the highest use of stabilization funds used to supplement the operating budget in known history to the town of Charlton. You can see the chart with the stabilization funding. The Water Sewer Commission has been paying its debt from the Water Stabilization Fund, which I'm afraid to say will be depleted this year. Although water betterments have been assessed at 50%, without the rest of the planned new infrastructure being built and activated, we will begin to pay future debt out of the general fund. This year, the Water Department has no funds for operations. One-time revenues. There have been several revenues that could be considered one-time, and that might have provided a false sense that the revenues were steadily increasing and might continue to do so. It is fiscally responsible to have modest amount of funds remaining at the end of the year. This is planned by the Finance Committee and is relied on for capital purchases in the fall. Let's look at free cash and those large one-time amounts that contributed to free cash and that now have come to an end. And I have a list for you here from July 1st, 2003 to July 1st, 2013. And you can take a look, you can see where, we've found some one-time revenues. The past year we had in free cash was $485,000, which included insurance recovery of $76,000, appropriation turnback of $257,000, sale of tax possessions $50,000, a tower lease $20,000, and FEMA and MEMA prior year storms was $80,000. So you can see there's a couple of charts here, general fund free cash, and how that has fluctuated over the years. There's also a chart here that shows you the date certified for sewer fund and water fund and what those retained earnings were. Funding from the state. Is that a yawn? I agree. Funding from the state. FY '09, Charlton received $1,791,000 in local aid, less its assessments. And now, the FY '15 governor's proposed local aid amount is $1.3 million. That is a loss of $458,000 in state aid over 6 years. The town's general budget has increased from $20 million in FY '08 to a proposed budget by the department's $24,122,438 in FY '15, which an increase of $4 million over the last 7 years. This averages about $573,000 an increase a year. Education. Dudley Charlton Regional School District. Education is important to the town of Charlton. In FY 2011 and 2012, the town voted to appropriate the required minimum assessment by the State Board of Education. Prior to FY 2011, the Dudley Charlton Regional School Districts received an amount over the minimum assessment. In FY '14, this year, the Charlton Dudley Regional School District Superintendent made a motion to increase the school budget on town meeting floor and received an additional $143,000 in funding against the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee's recommendation. This increase added to the increase in reliance of one-time funds, and it was funded from the stabilization fund. The school committee is still in the budget process for FY '15, and the actual amount that the school will request is unknown. We have been told it will be reduced from the original school committee voted budget request of $12,694,197, an increase of $1.8 million over the recommended amount from FY '14. Dudley Charlton Regional School District's free cash equivalent for FY '14 this year was $2.2 million. At this time, we estimate a total education cost, which also includes Bay Path and Norfolk Agricultural High School tuition and transportation, to increase by $633,000, and that is, And in 2002, total education costs were 44% of the total budget, and today it's grown to 53% of the total budget. You will notice in the below chart that there was less than 1% increase in 2008. This was due to a change in the way that the Dudley Charlton Regional School District was directed by the State Board of Education to calculate the transportation costs. And it returned to the town $412,000. Thus, it appears that the actual cost of education was lower that year. Education as a percentage of the total tax increase has varied from 12% due to a Bay Path transportation refund to 112%, due partly to the new Dudley Charlton Regional School System's new transportation contract. In 2010, the total budget for education increased $1,056,308, which was a record high. In FY 2002, Dudley Charlton School District total costs were $6 million, and 12 years later, it has increased to 10.9 in FY '14. The increase amounts to $4.8 million, which is a 79.5% increase. At this trend, Dudley Charlton Regional School District's cost to Charlton will double by 2017 in just 15 years. For your review, below is a history of Dudley Charlton School District student population. In 2013, Charlton sent 2,399, and projected for next year of FY '15 assessments, there will be 2,112 students. While Charlton's cost has risen over 70% since 2003, student population has dropped by 12%, or 287 students. And there is an enrollment chart there also, so you can see how that's tracked. Dudley Charlton Regional School District student population increased this year by 20 students, and will send 329 more students than the town of Dudley. Below is a chart that shows the number of Charlton students and the per student cost. Charlton's cost per student has risen from $2,828 in FY05 to $4,829 in FY13, which is a 70% increase. Dudley's increase over the same period rose 55% and is $3,287 in FY13. Charlton paid an additional 30% more than Dudley per student this year. Below is a chart showing the operating cost per student for Charlton Dudley and its increases since 2005. As you can see, the gap has been growing between the two towns. Two reasons for the extraordinary increases relate to state funding calculations. The state education formula changed the way it determined the town's ability to pay for its student education. A wealth factor, valuation, and personal income combined has been added to the formula, which in turn requires Charlton to pay more proportionally than Dudley. Charlton is considered a wealthier town by its demographics. Thus, part of the assessment reflects a higher amount assigned to Charlton. And if I can go offline, I'm not sure whether any of you saw the Telegram and Gazette article when they talked about Bay Path and what the different towns' assessments were. But as I looked at that, I realized and questioned, we have two students that are worth $250,000 each based on this formula. The town of Southbridge has 188 students that they send, and they pay $1 million. We send 190, two students more, and we pay $1.5 million. So those two students are $500,000. I just want to point that out. At the same time, but I do have to say that Charlton is fortunate. So I do want to throw that in. At the same time, the state has determined that it would only pay a certain percentage in relation to the local contributions. In 2009, Senator Brewer explained at a joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, and school representatives that in relation to other cities and towns statewide, Charlton has done well in the percentage that the state has traditionally paid, which was upward 68%. The state has a target amount of 58% for all local aid to schools, which means over the last several years, the state has been reducing the aid to the Dudley-Charlton Regional School District as a percent of the total. This reduction is being solely borne by the taxpayers within the levy limit. The hefty educational increases to Charlton over the years have been paid from the general operating budget. And we still have a couple of more years. Bay Path Regional Vocational High School, from 2005 to 2011, Bay Path reduced its assessments to the town of Charlton. Reasons for a regional school district assessment to drop include less children from Charlton, adding students from other communities, adding new communities, and the school subsidizing the assessment. Last year's assessment was the largest increase in the past 12 years. This year will increase again. The new renovations will be increasing needed funds. The renovations will be paid outside the levy limit as voted by the taxpayers. This year's debt will increase from $60,241 to $128,690 next year in FY15. We understand that this will be another difficult season, budget season. I want to especially thank Joan Walker, Debbie Ciccarini, Keith Arsenault, and Lucia Blanchett for their hard work and diligence on researching and compiling data, for your review, as well as their dedication to sound financial management practices. Thank you also to Alan Gordon and Kurt Meskis for their contributions to this report regarding the new growth estimates through analysis of Charlton's commercial and residential markets. And that's all I have at this time. As I usually do, I will continue to update this throughout the budget season to finalize it. As I know more, I will change the numbers and fix it for you.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you very much for that work. As an editorial comment, I thank you even more because before we had a town administrator, the finance board would sit down and try to do that themselves. And not nearly as successfully as you have done. So thank you very much for that. Any questions or comments before you go on? I know you have more. Anything? Okay. You're all set, please.
It's kind of like standing in the cereal line, aisle, you just see so much cereal going by, you're not quite sure which one to pick out. I did give you a lot of information.
There was quite a bit there, yes.
I welcome you to take it home, look at it, think about it. If you have questions, call me.
Can,
I'd be glad
that
to.
means we get to keep these and take them home? No.
No, I'll email them to you.
Okay,
Nice try, Professor.
I'll give it a shot.
All right, so in your budget, and as I've said,
Budget.
the first page that you'll pull up is
Right
your
here.
revenue forecast.
Draft budget.
And the next page, you will see the budget, and we've named that last column many different things. So this year it is, we have the voted budget for FY13, the final budget as voted by town meeting this year that we're in, the department request for next year, for FY15, a draft column that I have been working on, and then the increase over the draft over FY14. I did put in the schools first number. Usually I don't. Usually I wait until at least the third one before I put it in. But with the schools first numbers and budget, we have a 2.1. If you look at the last page, we have a 2.1 deficit in the budget. In the draft column, that column is basically level funded, except for the personnel increases that are contractual. And in that one, we've got 313,000 deficit, and that is without using any stabilization at the moment, and that is without anything over minimum assessment. And I think minimum assessment for the school would give them an additional $5,000, so I think that is highly unlikely that we will get there. Right now, the non-union has been, their salaries are at 2%. We've just finished the fire contract, and that percentage for next year is 1.5, which will lower the non-union, so there'll be some savings. So the non-union salary increases will go from 2% to 1.8%. We have the highway department contract that's still under negotiation. If that contract is settled, then that will also affect the non-union percentage. As you know, we have a bylaw on the books that states that the non-union staff will receive an increase, which is the average of all the settled contracts at the time of town meeting. So I will keep you informed on how that goes. Do you have any questions?
Questions
Let me
over?
actually go through some of the changes and the things that I have in here. So, as I said, state aid is level funded per the governor's budget, but we did go to MMA, and Speaker DeLeo, shook his hand in the air and said we can do better than that. So I'm hoping he's true to his word and that he can do better than that. But I haven't seen any numbers floating out yet, and usually they leak by now. Assumed level funding for local receipts at this point. We've level funded the ambulance fees and the overlay. I can tell you that the veterans agent has come and asked for some veterans spot tax work-off. I am in conversations with him about, and Elaine, about maybe trying, we have 20 slots for seniors for the work-off, and I am suggesting at this time with him that we do 2 to be able to have him get an application out there and find out how many veterans we'd have that would be applying. So we would have 2 veterans tax work-off and 18 seniors. And then we could come back in the fall and take a look. If we find that there's an overwhelming need, you could choose to fund it at that time. Level fund snow and ice, and speaking of that, our veterans agent had a baby girl, I believe, yesterday. So congratulations to him. Level funded, snow and ice is actually 120,000, so that has increased. And that will be adjusted as we get closer to town meeting and more is known once we get past this season. We deleted the emergency management position as it's been assumed by the fire department. All the stipends are level funded, although some budgets did request increases. The non-union will be at 1.8 if no other contracts are settled, and fire has a 1.5 increase. Highway union contract is in negotiations, and the police and clerical, I believe, are at 2% increase. All stipends are level funded. One of the things we're doing in-house right now is taking a look at the postage. Many of the departments during my meetings with them stated that the postage has gone up and their budgets are so tight that just increasing postage makes a big difference. So we have a history of taking things that are consolidated in the different departments and consolidating them, such as the heating oil, utilities. So I'm going to also look at the postage. And if so, we'll adjust the budgets accordingly. And if we do that, what I've got right now as a working document is the last 2 full years of postage paid by each department. I'm averaging that over the 2 years, and then we'll take a look at that and to see whether or not we should use the average or the highest. We would take that out of their expense line items. It would be a wash. We would put it into one postage, and then we would be able to take a look and track it for the next 2 years. Somewhat like we did with the gas and diesel too. This budget removes the fire prevention officer and it removes the 19th officer. And that is one of the reasons that the $300,000 is not the $500,000 that was voted at town meeting. We may need to increase for contractual computer license fees. Right now, I'm holding 4% increase for insurances at this time. Worcester County retirement increased $25,000 this year. And gas and diesel, as you know, we've been in for a reserve fund transfer to this committee. I think it's been at least 2 years. So I have put in and I'm holding $50,000 in new monies for the gas and diesel. We have increased the veterans agent to full-time. And that's pretty much what I see as the larger changes to point out to you. I do want to say that meeting with the departments, they have all been very helpful. They understand. In some instances, they've decided to change their budget to be level funded when they realized it wasn't a automatic 2.5% that some people thought it was in the budget request. And in some instances, they've chosen to leave that number in because they want you to know really what they need in their budget. And I have been okay with either one, whatever they wanted to do.
That's represented in the numbers?
Yes, sir, in the department request. The only one that's really skewing the department request is the school, the first budget of the school. So as I get their other budgets, I will start to take that number down. So you'll see that come down. Any thoughts, suggestions on how you'd like to proceed from here?
Any questions, anyone? When will you get the final? Do you have every single piece in now from departments?
I have all of the budgets in.
But I mean, are there anything that might break down soon? Has anybody given you any indication of a new copy machine or something that isn't on here that could be on here? Did you know of any of that?
Well, if something breaks down, we will come to see you because you have the reserve fund.
Reserve fund, okay.
If it's something that we think we may need to fund and we'll be able to take care of that in May, then we'll do an interdepartmental transfer. You have been receiving throughout the year reserve fund advisories, and I encourage the departments, if they think that something is out of the ordinary that they didn't plan for, they couldn't foresee, that they should be making sure that they make you aware of it so you can review your advisories to kind of have a sense of what it is you want to keep an eye on.
In a
We
reserve
have
fund?
monthly
70.
ledger reports that gives us a balance of all of the accounts. Joan does them and sends them out, and each of the departments is supposed to be reconciling their budgets and taking a look and keeping an eye. Joan does an incredible job as we'll get closer to town meeting, just keeping an eye out. She knows the spending habits and will give us a heads up if something looks awry. I also scan that on a monthly basis.
I have one question. Regarding the postage increase, do we do as much as we can online? I mean, is it mostly billing that's being post-mailed, or?
It would
So-
be the bills.
Do we do electronic bills here at all?
People can, we are not doing electronic billing at this point,
No.
not my understanding.
I think they have the option. We can't insist that they're doing it electronically, but I think Lucia set up something that if people want it.
Do they
for the
know they
bills-
have the option? Is it publicized at all anywhere?
I don't know.
They
A
can
lot of the
pay bills
postage
Like on the
us
website?
sending
Is it
out
on the
checks.
website?
A lot of the postage is us paying our bills, sending out checks.
Oh, all right, I see.
You know, one thing that surprises me, I get a bunch of tax bills. They all come individually. You know, to the same address on the same day. So,
Oh, yeah, I'll give you time for this.
you know, maybe,
I've
and
forgotten.
in fact, this is the first I heard I can get my bill electronically. Yeah, just what I get every year, I might save you 15 bucks a year.
this at home so I can study it.
15 bucks a quarter. But, it's good to know.
We are trying to move more towards online. We're doing online permitting now where people can do their permits and, you know, hopefully we'll keep progressing and trying to find efficiencies in using technology.
Anybody else have another question on these in regards to what you've done? And you've asked the direction. Well,
Before we go to that, I have one more sheet.
okay.
The capital. I've taken a look at capital. I've spoken with the departments on what their needs are. Some of them have talked to me about that there was no capital in the fall, and we had somewhat promised that we would take a look at that going forward, and we would look at that this year. You have in front of you the capital as it's been requested by the different departments.
How we get to
They're having trouble with it. Every time they turn
Every
the thing, it
time I
shrinks.
turn it, it goes,
It goes the other way.
No, that one's not gonna be a good one.
No, because when you scan them in sometimes that way,
It's got
yeah.
scanned in sideways.
How do you get to
Yeah.
that?
Two of those documents.
Which one's that?
This one here.
I gotta
Because
hold it on a
that-
slant.
I was trying to read it.
You gotta hold it on a
Doug,
slant.
Doug,
Hold it like
the
you
answer to this, Doug, is you kinda gotta do this.
Hold it on a
Thought you were
slant.
all falling asleep on this.
No, no.
Every time
Really
they turn
weird.
Doug, if you hold it on like a
I'll have
slant,
to,
then you go
I'll have
capital.
to do something with that.
see it.
No,
I
there's
don't
see it either. There's only one on here.
Five-year capital plan.
Scanned up
Capital
like
right there, draft
draft
capital. Second one, yeah, that one.
Okay,
There we go.
we'll have to,
You gotta turn it like he has, like with the corner down here.
Yeah, you just do about a three,
Oh, like,
if you do a three-quarter
corner.
turn.
okay.
Kitty corner.
You know, you were on such a good run with the great job you did on the last thing, but this one's really a little,
I needed to throw a challenge in for you.
no, we got it, we got
So
it.
you can see what you can
Oh,
do.
you just want the humor on the TV. So we're all-
Wow.
I hope they're
Okay,
enjoying
how do I
this.
do-
So they're-
Yeah, in the corner.
Okay, so
Yeah, there we go.
if you look at,
Like this,
actually,
Put it on the corner.
the 2004 should
Okay.
not be voted. That was a wish thought. So 2014, where we put everything back to, that would have been asked for at the special town meeting. You'll see that there's $1.8 million of capital that's being requested in this year. In FY15, it's 589. In FY16, there's 530,000. In 17, it's 1.3 million. In FY18 is 794,000. And then it just drops off FY19 to 312. I can assure you that some of these things will be running down and that bump will continue to move down. So out of the 1.8 million, when I talked to the departments to see what their immediate needs were, if you'll go down to the last column where you see it says annual town meeting, I would like to request from you consideration, and some of this is also some requests that selectmen have made to have on the annual town meeting for capital for the townspeople to have a chance to vote on. So I would recommend at least funding one police cruiser in May for $45,000. The Fay Mountain Farm roof at $60,000, that has been asked to come back, or if the town is not going to fund it, to at least make a decision on what's gonna happen with it. I have heard that there is a grant for it, so if that grant comes in, this will not be on it. As you know, we don't, put this anywhere until we start making the booklets 3 days before town meeting, so this is kind of a working draft at this point. Highway, he's looking for a dump truck at $117,000. Superintendent Foskett is requesting that be done now, because for him to get it in time for next season, if he waits until October, it'll be too late. He won't be able to get that truck in for that season. And you do have, we will have you going down and taking a look at the fleet before you have to make any decisions on this.
Now, this is a Freightliner dump truck. Now, is it gonna be put out to bid to be Freightliner only, or can it be a Volvo or a Mack?
I think he's been trying to get
Sterling.
some of the same trucks. We also can use the state bid list, so my guess is that his request is tied to the state bid list. But I'm sure he'd be open to hearing any suggestions anyone has. The tech committee, computer network replacement, I really don't want to fall behind on the replacement and maintaining that, especially as we try to find efficiencies in other areas for technology. So I look at that one the same as I do a police cruiser. It's just constant and should be there every year. And the library has the chiller noise reduction. They've asked me to put this out to bid again, and I'll be working on that. Again, I've heard that there may be a grant out there for this, but we'll wait and see. But I have been requested to put this on, and I believe that was the request out of the library chiller roundtable meeting.
Robin?
Yes, sir.
On the police cruiser, I know the chief mentioned last year that he had opportunity to get refurbished ones, and I certainly wouldn't want to do a whole fleet of that until we tried one, but it would be nice to try one of those, maybe in addition to this cruiser, just so we could evaluate, because if it is, I think they were around 10,000. There would be a big savings in the future, but I wouldn't want to do it without at least having one and have the chief evaluate if it was a worthwhile program or not.
That's a good point, and my recommendation would be to fund a brand-new cruiser in May, and then he could have between May and the special town meeting to research that and get something ready to bring back to you.
Would you
for
be in
his
favor of
second
that, Chief?
cruiser, if that works for him.
I'll reserve my comments on capital.
Okay. While you were here, I thought I'd throw it out to you.
Robin, I may be jumping ahead a little bit, but in one category, you have the debt exclusion for a fire truck.
Oh, you're jumping ahead.
I'm jumping ahead on you.
Are you finished with the annual town meeting?
To be discussed, I suppose, in the future.
All right.
But you do
wanna
have
go-
that.
If you, I'd
ahead.
be glad to explain that before we.
Well, just
get some
briefly,
questions.
I haven't looked at the warrant articles. Are there other debt exclusions that are also being under consideration? Like,
You have a debt exclusion coming up for the fields in March, and then you will have a debt exclusion coming up if it passes town meeting, for fields, McKinstry Street. The recreation department has been working on trying to bring that back. I believe, they had brought it to the last town meeting, and we're gonna go back and get more information. The reason it needs to come back this year is because we have a purchase and sales agreement, and we need to tell the family whether or not we are going to purchase that property. So it's kind of, for that property, in my opinion, it's do or die at this town meeting, and if it's not funded, we need to release the property because the owner has other buyers interested. So that's the only other one that I know that is ready to come up as a debt exclusion.
thank you.
So, to the debt exclusion, and I am going by this because this reflects the conversations that I've heard you having, and the Board of Selectmen having together. Which would be to take two large apparatus and put them together as a debt exclusion. This would come out to a $1.3 million debt exclusion, and it would replace and combine the T-Truck 1 and Engine 5 for an amount of $321,000, and to replace the ladder truck at $1 million. These are just suggestions and drafts as to start to look at, and certainly as you start to meet with the departments.
Yeah, you,
You guys are cute.
we're gonna have to have a talk about this, I can tell.
I saw you trying to go
I
upside
mean,
down
this
there.
is, you'll start talking and it'll switch to the other side, and then I've gotta play, but
Okay,
it's fine.
so
We're,
that's,
we're okay.
that's your capital. So,
Can I ask you a question? That's our capital. I just want to go back to where you were at the annual town meeting. I think we need to look at this as a board
absolutely.
to see if there's some other things that we might like to add to your town meeting or subtract or whatever.
I'm anticipating that you will probably be voting some number from stabilization for your operating budget. I don't see you being able to cut $500,000 out of your budget. So you may, by the time the school comes in with their cost, so I'm anticipating that you may be somewhere around 3 to 4 or over from stabilization. I would recommend that you try to keep this town meetings capital. I've kept it down under 250,000.
No, I wasn't speaking about the end number in as much as maybe, and I don't know that this is true. I'm saying we need to, as a board, look at this. We may agree with all those, or we may want to remove one or add it, or put a different one in, or end up with 235, or, but
We do have the potential to have the Fay Mountain Farm and the library come off, if the grants come through.
I was just thinking we may have the potential for those even without a grant, so, just a thought.
My question about the ladder truck is, where are you gonna house this if you get it?
They would replace the ladder truck that they
That's
have
there
now.
now.
That's there.
It would go into the Quonset hut.
When we went,
You think it would fit there? I was looking at the one they were playing with, training with in Oxford a few weeks back, maybe a month back, and on a warm day, and it's quite a bit larger than what we have.
We've been down there. There is some room left in that Quonset hut. They're not all the way back, but there's not a lot.
I was thinking of height too.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very informational to us to go and look and see what it is they can't replace and what's going. And even though you don't become an expert on the equipment, if you're sitting here, we want to have that mental map of what's going on out there. So I think it was beneficial from that standpoint, very much so.
The other thing is I spoke with Chief Purvier, and one of the things that was supposed to happen, which we skipped when we went to the police department, was to take a look at the fleet.
Yeah.
So one of the things we're gonna try to put together is when we reschedule the site visits for the library and the highway, and we'll do that after the snow when it gets a little, maybe April. We'll try to also schedule swinging back by the police station and having the chief pull out his cruiser fleet so that you can see what they've got there.
Okay.
And that'll help you, I believe, make better informed decisions.
How many fires did we use the ladder truck in last year?
I can get that information for you.
I'm
I-
just thinking that the
Well, we're gonna have each
cruiser
department
was
head
like petty
come
cash.
before us, right?
It does,
Yeah.
yeah.
A couple fire trucks.
I did learn something that I wasn't aware of about, by going out to the site visit. When I asked the chief, Cloutier at the fire department, about that very thing, how many buildings do we have that this has the need to reach, and went through that. And I was surprised to find that it isn't so much for the height that they use it. They use it more often than I thought because they get the reach. They need the reach to get on the other side of a roof because they can't get close enough. And that just makes sense, but it's not something usually, you talk about a 75-foot ladder truck, you think how many buildings, of course we have Masonic Home, but how many buildings would need that? So it's something that has to be investigated. Any other questions for Robin, who's a little dry after reading for 2.5 hours? ask us.
question. On the revenue side of the budget, do we have any entities in town that pay pilots at all?
We have a pilot with Millennium, and they have another, I think, 6 years left on that pilot. For taxes, the Housing Authority pays a portion of taxes. We have talked to them about paying a water betterment, kind of pilot in lieu of taxes, but so far that hasn't been negotiated.
So they
Okay.
pay a pilot, but this was in addition to that.
For water.
For
So
water.
there's taxes and then there's the water. The water budget I don't have for you, I'm gonna be meeting with them, this week, next week. So, we'll have information and they'll come in before you because we probably will not be on the same page.
Any other questions?
I have one more question. Sorry.
No, you,
No,
you,
that's
this is, no, that's it, you're done.
Is there a, I'm over the limit,
You've
sorry.
got your limit.
Is there a list of town-owned property anywhere?
You can get one of the assessors, we do
At the
have them.
All right, thank you.
You have something you want to sell, like this building? That would take care of
I'm just curious.
The ice house?
the ice house, I would.
The barn?
A few other places, yes.
Yeah, the cities that get in trouble, there's like Stockton, California. They sold their town hall and the
thank
city
you.
hall and rented it back. When we're in that tough shape. Sorry.
No, we don't, know. So,
So what's your pleasure? How would you like to proceed?
well, I think first of all, we have a meeting in 2 weeks. We need to digest an awful lot here and come back with some recommendations based upon what you've put together. And then I would like to see all of us look this over, come back with ideas that we have on what you've presented and how we'd like to move forward from this.
You're gonna send this all to our Dropbox at home?
You can access Dropbox from your home.
Yes,
What
already.
you will do is go onto the internet and Google Dropbox. It will come up, you will sign in. Actually, if you can find the email that I sent you, if you just,
Click
if
on
you
it. She's
just
got it.
click on that,
Yeah.
it'll
she's got
take you, and then it will automatically link you.
So, and then
to
all this
this.
stuff is,
Yes.
It's all in there.
okay,
And if you would like some help, Peter, you can just come by the office and I can do it for you.
well, I'll just have my son help.
Even better.
That's what I got him for. Remember when I paid college?
So if there's other things that you would like throughout the week, let me know and I will try getting the information and putting
When
it
was
into
we
the
gonna start
Dropbox so you
on,
can get to it.
Departments coming in and.
That's the next question, but before we get to that, you had a comment you wanted to
Yeah,
ask.
actually, on yesterday's meeting, on the selectmen's meeting, I actually had a question on the school. And I could be wrong, so that's why I wanna ask, so I'll be clear on it. There's gonna be 2 questions on the ballot for the school field. The first question, if we want it, and the second question, if we have a debt exclusion. So the way I'm looking at that is, if we have everybody vote for the first one, but they said our budget's fine, the people that don't pay attention to this stuff, and we don't have a debt exclusion, then on top of our regular budget, we're gonna have to be taking 2.2 million out of our regular budget. Am I wrong on my thinking on this?
Well, they would say that you won't really have to take 2.2 because they have 1.2 promised as a donation. So
Well,
that leaves
until they get
$1
it,
million, right, so
you know,
that
you
means
can't count on
$1
it.
million between the 2 towns. And yes, it would be split proportionally. Right now, that would be about $114,000 for FY15 for us, if we have to do it within the budget or out of the budget.
So would
That's
that come
our
out of the
amount.
school portion of the budget, or that comes out of our operating budget?
That would be added to the capital for
That's
the
it.
Dudley Charlton
That,
Regional School.
I guess the part that bothers me is this, the first I heard of it doing it this way was last night. And the school committee has never come before this board and says you might have $115,000, depending how this vote is done. So it just seems a little, I don't wanna use the word sneaky, but for a better word, that's what I'll use. Way of bringing this to the townspeople, and the townspeople might not actually know what they're voting for. Cause the way the budget's running, it's gonna be very tough to do the budget as it is, never mind if and it's not just, we're adding 115,000 next year, it's the next 15 years we'll be adding that to our budget.
Well,
No.
it goes down every year. That's the max.
Well, no, just as a way of explanation, and I understand your concern, the 115,000, it does go down each year, but the 115,000 will be the maximum if there were no donations. With the donations coming in, that 115,000 are probably about 56 or 58,000, which is what we would see as we went through the process. We only pay half of that, correct?
54%.
I mean, using your numbers,
I think it was
Or-
54%, but,
you're 54, 46, I think.
yeah.
Yeah, but the thing that's unfair about this, right, you'd probably have people, if they knew the grant was really gonna happen, or the donation, they would vote for it. Because they're saying, okay, I'm getting a great discount, I'm paying 45% instead of 100%.
Mhm.
Without knowing that, there's probably a lot of people that say, hey, look, there's gonna be people that say, hey, I'd rather have a fire truck than new fields. I mean, not that I would vote that way, but I haven't been to a football game there in 20 years, but, where do you spend your resources?
Well, if it was a totally, and I don't know why it didn't get put on just as a debt exclusion, I guess that's my problem.
You have to
It-
separate, it's legal, for legal purposes, they have to separate the questions.
Well, generally, when the town is going to vote something that's large and would impact the budget, they will make it contingent upon a debt exclusion, so they don't, affect the budget, have that kind of impact. $100,000, can have a great impact above and beyond what we anticipate for the others. So, I do hear what Mr. Cooper is saying, and, it could have been done that way, but it wasn't.
I think the argument about the fire engine is kind of silly. I hope most people don't think like that. We don't have to do either or here. All the important things should get done.
Well, you can only go to the well so many
Yeah.
times, is what I'm saying, so if you, when is it, April 8th, the vote for
March.
the,
No, it's March 18th.
March 18th, okay.
It's
So
been in the paper like 3 times, all the
I know,
details.
so,
That's why I'm like, I don't think it's
if
sneaky
you
at
go
all.
that, and then,
read the paper.
then, 90 days later, you're looking for a debt exclusion for a fire truck.
Which is important, right? A fire truck is important, just like having fields that aren't a liability is important. These are important things. It's infrastructure.
Well,
Yeah, I think the
We
point
live
is
here.
that if
One-
we
one at a
had
time,
a
please.
monthly, request for a debt exclusion,
You start
no
losing
matter how much you
credibility.
need them,
Yeah.
you're not gonna get it. If you had one every month,
True.
okay.
But you have to bring these things to the people and let them decide, don't you?
Well, I think
That's what we're
normally
doing.
it's brought in front of us as well, because
But we
Yeah.
were supposed to get together and there was some sort of malfunction in the, right, Frank? Wasn't there supposed to be a meeting?
No, that was on the joint financial planning committee, that really wasn't this.
You would think this would be covered if the schools and the finance committees are getting.
Well,
together.
that's the point, that I would thought the schools would have come here
I think it would have been part of
I
it,
agree.
yeah.
to the board here if we was gonna be responsible to take it out of our normal
I
operating
think it
budget.
was a done deal by the time that meeting came around.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is,
There was no input then.
excuse me, the other thing is, what if Charlton votes for it and Dudley votes against it?
It's the total number of
Total
votes.
number, it's total, yeah.
I get a little concerned that people are upset at the lack of collaboration, and then they punish, the fire department or the children of the town that you use the field. I don't think that, what you're asking for is something for the community. You don't wanna punish the community because the groups don't collaborate, right?
What the truth
That's my
is,
concern.
is that people need to prioritize, and some people are having tight budgets at home. And if they're given 3 different things to look at in 6 months, they're gonna hopefully look at what's most important, what needs to be done. Sometimes that can be affected by timing, who gets to the question first, how the question is done.
Dennis?
So, to your point that people should be able to choose what they want,
Absolutely.
the problem here is that there's a question coming up, and there's a vote coming up on the 18th. And nobody's aware of the debt exclusion for the fire truck, and they won't be when they make this vote on the 18th. So, there is a problem.
Or the one for the fields, right, which is even sooner, I think.
No,
isn't it?
the
No,
fields is
Fields
the
the 18th.
No,
No,
you're
she's
talking
talking-
about street fields. So separate fields.
Two fields,
That's
McKinsey
at the
Fields.
town meeting.
So the problem is that you can't separate these things and say that they're individual, because they do have to be taken into
Well,
consideration.
hopefully we can make that case right here,
When?
right? Right now.
You're
We are making it at this
Yeah.
moment.
you're pretty close to the date that these things are gonna start to happen.
No, I just,
It's not the school's responsibility to say, hey, you know, we're coming forth with this, and, oh, by the way, if the town has anything, that's coming right behind it.
I wouldn't have had a problem with them bringing this, the school bringing this in here, if it was a debt exclusion for the thing. But now it may be a debt exclusion, or it may not be, depending on how it gets voted on. That's my problem. If it was brought in as, if the school committee brought that in as a debt exclusion, and then it's up to the townsfolk to vote on it, and their taxes would go up accordingly. But if it's gonna be not a debt exclusion, and then it comes out of, which police officer do we lay off, or fireman do we lay off, to put a field in? And that's what the citizens of the town aren't understanding, and that's my point.
Okay. Any other? Well, I think we aired that rather well. Anyone else have a question on? So we have your question, to address your question, where do we go from here? And that I was a little bit in the middle of there was the idea that we need to digest some of this. We need to make sure, my thoughts are that we need to make sure this year that we do have collaboration and joint meetings with the selectmen, and that we have good representation from both boards, so that we do stay on the same page. It doesn't have to be, you know, a voluminous amount. It doesn't have, but we do need to have this collaboration. That's one thing I would like to see. I would like to also begin to, I would like to ask you to contact the department heads.
I have a meeting tomorrow morning.
Could you somehow begin a schedule for us? I would appreciate if you would begin a schedule, so they can come before us and speak to us. I know that some say, well, my budget is $2,600, but I would like an invitation to every single department. If they choose not to come because they feel that they don't need to, that's fine.
That's usually the email that goes out.
And that's excellent, but I would like to begin that process as soon as possible, and schedule on maybe 2 or 3 nights, and we will go from there. Any other things that you would like to add to that? Did I miss something?
Do we need to explicitly state as a board how we feel about that second question? Like that we would prefer a debt exclusion or not? Just so people out there have a understanding of how we feel would be a better way to fund it, should it pass?
If you want to make a motion or anything, I would certainly entertain
I'm
anything.
asking, I'm new.
No,
Is it
I-
necessary?
Well,
I mean, do you think it's important?
That's a good point. You know, when they have the referendum, questions on the ballot,
Mhm.
you know, for like the state ballot, for, you know, the 2 or 4 year election.
Sure.
And they have it, and they have an explanation. You know, if you vote for this, this
You
is
get
what it
this,
means.
yes.
And I think that that's what should be on the ballot, you know. I mean, a cautionary thing that, look, if you're, sure, hey, who doesn't want ball fields, you know? But, you know, who wants to pay for them all in 1 year? You know,
So would you, Robin, would that be something we could affect a change on, to get an explanation on the ballot? This is a school, I don't see how we can, it's a good idea, and what you said is a good idea, but is it not the school that would make the determination as the wording of that?
Pretty sure it's lawyers that
It's,
determine the
Well,
that's
yes,
all
it is,
done.
of course, yeah.
I mean, the ballot question, if you're talking about the question
Yes.
for March 18th, that's done.
Printed.
That's printed,
Yeah.
done. The only way you're gonna get any wording is the sign.
Yeah, that would have to be a big
Smart
sign, I know. She was getting a little smart. This wasn't helpful either, by the way.
This would be signs or handouts.
The question on the floor, though, is, should we as a board state, so that whoever's watching, that we prefer that you would vote
The funding
you know,
source
we would support the funding source being the debt exclusion?
versus the other way. It would
You
be
are,
much more
you are
useful.
free to make a motion, and we can discuss it, and,
All right, so,
I don't think it alters anything.
No,
well,
no,
just
just
lets
to-
people know which
just
way
let
we
us know
if
what
something
we've
was
thought
going to
about,
pass,
yeah.
how we prefer to pay for it,
Yeah.
right? We're voting, we're just explaining the funding source.
Yeah, and I think
For
she
people
makes a
who are
legitimate
little bit-
claim there. I mean, we are a board responsible for funding.
You're basically saying,
So
should
we're
we take it out
saying
of our pocket,
do
or
this,
should
not
we use
this.
a mortgage?
Not on this question, we're not responsible for the funding at all.
Well, yes, we will if they decide that this is going to come
If
just,
it passes and we didn't condone one way or the other,
yeah, I think we
wouldn't
make a,
look kinda silly?
I'll entertain a motion.
All right, so I make a motion that, we condone the use of a debt exclusion
I-
versus operating revenue.
How about support?
Support,
Recommend,
Recommend.
we
support.
recommend,
Yeah, one of those two, yeah.
all right, in the case that the, so it's question 2 that I'm talking about, the one where you're determining your funding source for the fields. If you
To
vote
say
yes,
yes.
I would imagine that it would allow a debt exclusion to be used. So I would say that I make a motion that we support the use of a debt exclusion and, as
For
opposed
funding.
to
For funding.
operating revenue, right?
We have a second on that?
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Can we have
Any
one more
discussion?
upon- So we're,
Yep.
we're saying we're gonna
Computer
vote to, I know if you had your druthers, you'd rather have a debt exclusion, okay? But are we really recommending, you know, in view of where the budget is going, in view of other capital expenditures we might have to have at this meeting, saying, okay, we're gonna say to the townspeople, we think it's a good idea to go vote for this?
I think she's not saying
I'm not
that.
talking about question 1, I'm talking about question 2. Question 1 is
If you
yes or
vote
no,
for
should
it, we
recommend
would
In other words,
prefer-
if you've already voted for it, would you now vote debt
for a debt
exclusion also?
Instead of operating revenue, right? Or
If you've committed to it, we're not saying you should commit to it, but if you have committed to it,
Right.
would you take the next step
Right.
and do it this way?
So as I understand it, the
That,
first
I think that's what she's
question-
saying, but,
Right, I'm not talking about, the first question is gonna say something like, authorize the school committee to borrow a bunch of money to fix the fields, yes or no?
2.2 million.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what the first, I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about
Yep.
the second question says, authorize the town of Charlton to use a debt exclusion to pay for that. That's the one I'm saying, if you're gonna say yes to the first one, you
And
should
that
really
is how
say
it's
yes to
worded,
the
correct?
second one. It's
Pretty-
something like that,
pretty much.
right?
Well, to protect your budget, you might even wanna be saying, whether you vote yes or no, please vote yes on number 2.
Right,
okay.
that's a good point.
And because that does affect what we do immediately, and I think we should speak up on it. She is completely correct in that.
So yes on 2 is,
Yeah.
Do we wanna make a
if it's
recommendation
called-
on number 1?
No,
No?
So you're saying, okay, if number 1
Does
is
it
on.
one way or the other.
Number 2 doesn't make any difference.
No, if it passed too, it's got nothing to do with our budget.
Did
Well,
anybody
yes,
second
because
that?
it affects what we're gonna do
Yes,
for
I did.
our fire truck.
Thank you.
They're not gonna pass 2.
Number 2,
Oh, no, yeah, but now we're really getting
Then we
special.
won't get a fire truck.
Yeah,
Right
no,
side of the
I'm
table.
sorry, excuse me.
if they vote down number 1, what happens to number 2?
It's a moot point.
It's moved, right?
Yeah.
It's gone, okay. Okay.
Any further discussion before we, let's get that, yes, sir.
Yeah, so I think by voting on the second question and not addressing the first question, you're answering a question that is contingent upon a question that you're not even taking a vote on. I don't see how that gives anyone any direction at all. Because I think I would be uncomfortable suggesting that we support question 2, which would give the impression that we're supporting
Question
question 1.
one.
And I don't know how you can separate those things, given the 2 questions that are in front of us.
I think you're just saying, if you choose to purchase this thing, you know, it's like saying to somebody, if you're gonna buy that, you know, don't use a credit card, use this other thing. Like, it's just giving them financial advice on the purchase.
I understand
If
where you're
you were to
coming from.
purchase it.
I think I would, I'm going to have to abstain from this question just because I can't take one position without affecting the other. I don't know how to do that.
I mean, this is like, you know, asking someone, did you stop beating your wife? You ever hear that analogy? Well,
Sorry, it's completely inappropriate.
yes or no?
I wanna see how this ties
Did you
together.
stop beating your wife, okay?
I'd
If
be
you never.
the only one up here, I think it's completely inappropriate. Just so you know.
No, I'm just saying, so basically.
saying.
It's an
there
old
should-
statement
there
that's
should
been
have
used.
There should
It's
have been
way beyond me.
one thing on the ballot that said, would you approve a debt exclusion to pay for the ball field?
I think you just lost it.
Could you reword
Yeah, could
the,
you use a better analogy?
no, not you. Could you reword yours to say that the finance committee takes no position on one,
On question 1.
on question 1?
I hope that's what it's called, question 1 and question 2.
Yeah.
I
but
making
going from there, I don't know if that's gonna get where you want to
All
be,
I was
that's
saying
all.
is, if you're going to buy something, we'd prefer you use
Actually,
this
they're-
mortgage option.
Technically, they're both question ones, because one is a
A and B.
district, election, and one is a town election.
Okay, so
Oh,
that's
is
not
this a
gonna even
check out,
help.
check back in?
Oh, okay,
Okay, so that's
okay.
not easy to
Two questions,
clarify.
that's really,
Two
that
separate
really is
ballots?
not gonna work
Yeah,
then.
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
Two separate.
Yeah,
Not-
check
not
out,
just
check back in, yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so,
That doesn't help.
good try, but it's not gonna help with that,
Yeah, it
yeah.
doesn't help, sorry.
You could have said that a few minutes
So
ago.
how do we end this for the
You'd like to
purposes of
watch us fight up here,
documentation?
that's
What do
right.
we say, like,
You can just
motion,
withdraw your.
Just withdraw the
Withdraw
motion.
your
motion withdrawn
Thank you.
Withdraw my second.
And there we go.
due to,
Now,
to confusion at the poll.
so we've established that we need to have further meetings, and I would like to ask the cable man, or the cable guy, the one that made the movie, the cable guy, you'll be available to do our meetings, and we'll get your schedule. Thank you for that, okay? And I would recommend that all boards, whenever possible, televise, because I think it makes sense to get as much information out there as possible. Do you have anything else to offer to us?
Since you decided not to do the vote, and that's been confusing, one of the pearls in that conversation was the question of how to get the information out about what the town's needs are, so that people can think about it in a more, macro way. So one of the things that you may wanna do is ask your chairman to talk with some of the reporters and explain how and what the financial situation is, and what the impact of one vote versus another vote would do. And I'm imagining that our two local reporters will be reporting, on this sometime between now and March 13th.
I'll call Chelsea tomorrow. Chelsea
Or
Davis.
even Deb LaPlaca
When is the vote up, the 13th
Yeah.
or the
from
18th?
the
18th.
team.
Debbie, yeah.
Yeah.
Deb.
So we need to.
I spoke to,
That's sort of the case that the selectmen did last night, right? Because the headline of the article today was that they recommended the debt exclusion. Did you
No,
guys
they
see that article?
recommended.
I didn't see it.
They recommended the debt exclusion. You didn't see the article?
What-
That's sort of
the
what I was-
selectmen recommended it last night?
Yeah, I can look
I
it up
think
on
they
the
did
YouTube.
say last night that if you're going to do
If
it.
you're going to do it.
Yeah, the
it's
same
fine.
thing
it's a
that,
debt
yeah.
exclusion.
It's funny, I already-
Well, then make a motion that's the same as the selectmen, so we can be on the same page, but you're gonna end up with the same kind of a statement if you're going to do it. If you're going to vote for it, please vote for it,
But then
Please-
that's where you.
but we're right back where we were.
Yeah, I just said if you go,
Yeah.
either way, even if you vote no, you could still vote yes for the debt exclusion.
I just had a talk with Ms. Davis yesterday on the snow and ice, and she was going to call me back for something, so I will speak with her. I will make what you said clear to her,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah. It's
Thank you.
important.
That was a very good suggestion. Any others? I would like to make just one comment, that we're not following the rules of the finance board the way we've always done them. Usually when we have a new member, they get 2 questions per night. So you're done until February 2017.
Then I have to resign. Sorry.
Okay,
Oh, I'm not.
but I do appreciate that you do. I appreciate that you have questions. That's great. Yes, sir.
Do we have a figure for the, recreational field that the Charlton Rec Committee is gonna be coming forward?
I don't have that yet.
Now,
When
is
is-
this
when
just to purchase the land?
It, the last I heard that they were talking about was they were going to ask for the whole thing. Instead of just purchasing the land, they were going to ask, are you committed to actually doing the fields and to come and ask for the whole?
How many acres are there,
40 acres.
42? I thought it was 40, somewhere around 40.
40-something.
Okay.
And how many acres under the, power line? I think that's a good question to know. I mean, is it 40 gross acres with 12 acres under the power line?
I don't know,
No.
but I know it's 8 house lots.
8 ounces. You can run under the power lines like a little soccer.
Well, I mean, here's what I would think,
Thought that
okay?
was funny, didn't you?
If I was a recreation person, I wanted to see this happen, all
That was
right?
good.
Here's how I would do it. I'd say, let the town buy it for X amount of dollars, let's say $400,000. And there's a potential for 12 fields, okay? Then you go to all these soccer groups, all these, you know, the Little League or whatever that are private groups, and say, we'll give you a $1 a year lease for this parcel, or this parcel, or this parcel, and let it get built like the field across from the, Beagle Club. You know, and then, hey, that's doable, instead of going out and say, hey, we wanna buy a piece of land for $400,000 or $500,000, and by the way, we want a debt exclusion for that too, for $2 million or whatever.
What is the cost of the land? What was it at the time? Do we know yet?
I don't remember off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
it was more than that though, I think.
I think it's like
Yeah.
5.
Okay,
But I think they also wanted to look at putting a clubhouse
today.
and putting some amenities down there too,
can't
bathrooms.
No, turn
It
right.
didn't work 'cause
just
it's
vote on
in
debt
Facebook.
exclusion, okay.
Yeah,
I'll look it up,
that's
yeah.
what I was-
Yes, vote on debt exclusion, okay.
The headline is Charlton Selectman urges yes vote on debt exclusion. That's the same thing I was asking for.
To the average person, they read the headline, they say, gee, the
They're for
selectmen
Are
are
recommending it.
recommending the
Yeah.
purchase.
No, when you read the article, that's not quite what it says.
Well, no,
Read
maybe,
the
but the
article.
headline does do what
Right.
Dan says, yeah.
Right, but the rest of the article's pretty clear.
Then you need to contact everyone and read that article to them.
It's on Facebook.
Well, okay,
It's pretty
no.
good for the younger people, but I don't know about.
Hey,
Doesn't say whether they recommended it or not.
I won't,
Just the debt
before we finish,
Just the debt exclusion.
I won't bring up the point that I got my computer degree and you weren't born yet.
And
Just,
yes,
I
you
had to
need
throw
give-
that in there.
you
Excuse me,
need to
was
give the
anybody?
computers back.
Oh, I see how it's gonna be, one of those nights, huh? I'm sorry, what was that, ma'am?
I said yes, and you have to give the computers.
Okay, is there anything else to come before the board here? We've had, I think, a very productive evening. Robin, once again, I thank you for putting together an excellent presentation. I know that that's a lot of work, and I appreciate it. Anyone else, comment? Don't stack them, rookie, on top of each other, please. We have boxes for these. All right, I will entertain one.
Motion to adjourn, second.
He makes him, he seconds him, no problem over there. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Thank you all. Robin, Joan, thank you.